Here, don't you know? Um, it's an honor. I'd like to say I'm a little nervous. what, what do you think? New radio voice?
Oh, I like it.
Oh no, you're doing You're doing Scottish.
Yeah.
No, it's not on. We're not doing that haggis. No, what I'm doing was a Midwestern guy, kind of nervous.
I thought you were doing Canadian.
No, like the Chicago Bears. He likes the Chicago Bears.
Oh.
And not to be confused with the Canadian, because that's a different.
Yeah, I was confused about what you were talking about.
A. So okay, so he finally texted back just now. The joys of running a business. Yeah, that was awesome. I love running the business. It's awesome. It's incredible. It's super. It's so much fun and so much anxiety fueled. Folks, I am sick as like an animal here, but you would never know it because you know what? I'm a trooper. My wife was like, "Don't do the show," and she was very dramatic about it. She was like, "Honey, don't do the show. Don't do a show. Don't do it." And I was like, "Well, I get please don't do it." And I was like, "Well, I really, but don't do it." And I was like, "Okay, fine." So I laid down. I took a nap. Pretended to. When she went to sleep, I was out the door. Just kidding, man. If my wife didn't really want me to do the show,
we wouldn't do it.
We wouldn't do it because she kind of runs things.
Yeah,
and I'm not one of those guys that's like, oh, my wife runs me. Let me find out what my boss wants me to do. No, we're a partnership. She does a lot of the heavy lifting, and I kind of take orders when it's necessary. Okay, and what I mean by the heavy lifting is if we have like a big pile of bricks, I don't really care if she just had a surgery or if she's got some sort of illness. You're going to lift your half of the bricks, lady, because a deal's a deal.
If someone breaks in,
Fair is fair. Yep. Last time I took care of the problem,
yeah, she's got to get the next one.
When the neighbor Shih Tzu got in the backyard, I ran it off.
Like a hero.
Yeah.
We're all about equality.
Equality. So when the next time when an intruder comes in bearing a weapon or something, I'm sitting back and letting her deal with it because it's her turn. It's your turn. And if we all end up, being destroyed because of her inefficiency, then so be it. Because equality is what I'm all about. Here at PRT, you pull your load. And I am not going to sit back and allow inequality. We're not opening doors and doing all that niceties and all that stuff. We're not saying ma'am. Okay? And we're splitting half the check. All right? Everywhere we go. That's my promise to you, ladies and gentlemen. People say you're being cheap. I'm being a modern man who's not exactly sure about his what I'm supposed to be called. Ma'am, sir, baby, child, whatever. I'm very confused. Funny story. We went out to eat the other day, and somebody actually asked me, like, okay, you look at me, right? Unless you think I'm from a freak show and I'm the bearded lady, you're not going to be confused about my pronouns. But this person, I don't know if they were being snarky or what, but they were confused. Anthony's arm is in the way here.
Sorry.
Please go away.
His shoulder.
Never mind.
Please go away. You're just very
They
distracting.
weren't paying attention to me until you called attention to me.
Well, here's the
You had the floor. Now you gave.
Here's the thing here, like I need to move this way and I'm going further away from the microphone to get away from the lettering. So you might want to adjust that, sir.
You don't have to move out.
Yeah, because I don't want to hit my knee here. Okay, well, just the camera needs to be moved. Like, yeah, go ahead. Anyways, folks, it was a real quick, funny story. Somebody said that sir, I'm sorry. And I'm like, what do you mean you're sorry? And they couldn't tell me what I was supposed to be. I'm like, how old are you? I'm 20. I said, okay, that's why. You're very confused. I said, I'm a man, and you can address me as sir. If we get to be friends on a first name basis, you can call me Lord Wolf.
Do you identify as a wolf?
Pretty much. But, a male wolf. That's why I'm not Lady Wolf.
It's very important.
So it's gotten sort of, and me personally, I don't have a dog in this fight because I don't really give a crap what you call yourself. You know what I mean? You can call yourself the Porpoise King of Mars for all I care. I don't give a crap what you identify as. You can identify as a panda, But me personally, I'd like to be called, what I am, which is a man, which is sir. I don't know how you can look at a 400-pound guy. I'm the size of a lowland mountain gorilla with a beard, and then kind of wonder about what am I supposed to call you? It's almost like you're being punked. You're like, because if this was 10 years, 15, 20, especially even 10 years ago, I would think this person was messing with me. But in this climate now that we're in, everybody's so confused. How? I don't, Anyways, I just thought that was so ridiculous. And then today we had a horrible, we were trying to get home from doing the mail. We did the mail offs today. So if you're in the Patreon, Anthony got the mail offs. We got the mail offs done today. We dropped everything off and got it turned over to the nice people over at Postal Annex so they could send it to you. So that's coming to you. We did 10 of them today. So if you're a Patreon member, there's a good chance that you're getting your swag on. So, that's good. That's cool. We were on our way home, and the traffic just bottlenecked, and I was like, what in the heck is going on? So we're on 183, and we were just going nowhere. It was just like traffic was sitting still.
Bless you.
Bless you, what, sir?
Gentlemen.
Gentlemen. Oh, okay. Thank you. I'm not gentle, but I am a man.
Ruffman.
Thank you for that, Tony. Thank you for not being confused about that.
Bless you, gentle being.
Gentle being, carbon-based life form. We figured out what was going on, and it was literally right across the highway. Not exactly across the highway, but close to where my studio is right now. And what did we see, Anthony?
We saw a pretty bad wreck. It was well, at first the first thing I saw was like this car that was all mangled up, and then you see like the covered body, but that like the guy's arm was like hanging out from the
Yeah,
tarp.
you could see it.
Yeah, it was really disturbing, morbid.
There might have been two because I saw, but I saw on the other side, like I saw somebody who was already fully covered. So I think there were two fatalities. Because I saw one and then another. So on the other, so there might have been two. I'm not real sure. I didn't go home and look. The point of this is to tell you that, they're going home, rush hour traffic on a Friday. They worked all week and they had a 2-car accident and there were fatalities. And being serious as anything. You young people need to understand this, and this is why I'm telling you this. You could just go to the store to get some bread so you can make a sandwich. Go to to go to your favorite fast food place or whatever, right up the street from where you live. And you could be in a fatal car wreck. This is as serious as a heart attack. I'm not joking here. This isn't a funny, this isn't a skit. I'm telling you right now that you need to slow it down. Okay, over here we got people driving 90 miles an hour, blowing through lights and doing all kinds of stuff. And for what? Now, those people are not going to make it home. There's people who probably care about them. They probably didn't know from one minute to the next that their life was about to end. They probably yesterday were making plans for the weekend and what they were going to do July 4th or whatever, and now they're not. Like that, boom, just as simple as that. And this isn't the first time I've seen a fatal wreck. I've seen many of them here in Austin because people drive like crap. And they have been for a long time. That's one thing you can't blame on the Californians. They're like, oh, the Californians came and everybody's driving like crap. No, you were doing that before they came here. Californians, what I noticed is the prevalence of people tailgating since the Californians came.
Yeah. Yeah, they get right on you, they rush you.
Californians, New Yorkers, and Chicagonites, they all do that. But one of the things I noticed, long before they came, somebody was complaining about people tailgating and all. So I said, but before they came, there was this thing in Austin called, I don't care if you're in the lane next to me, and no signal light, and they just go over. And you're sitting there going like, okay, hello, you're talking to yourself, and you're yelling at them, hey, like they can hear you, and like they care, and they just whoop. And I have literally been flung into a ditch. And then the other day, somebody pulled out in front of us, and we zigzagged, and we narrowly missed. It would have been bad for them. I mean, they pulled out in front of us. I got a grill guard, a cattle guard on my truck. So your little Honda would have been completely destroyed. But thank God, that God gave me, reflexes to move and not hurt the person. Because I'm pretty sure we would have been fine. But that person, their driver's side door is only going to give you about that much, and you're going to be all up in that wreck on a T-bone. So it is very, very important that you drive as safe as you can, and you young people especially out there, please, please, please. I've emphasized that with my boys. I've told them that they need to try and drive with caution. Never take it for granted. Every day, it's the most important thing you'll do. Other than getting up and praying, I pray every morning when I wake up. And then after that, it's driving. That's the most important thing you'll do. Here. I asked somebody the other day. Of course, it was Zane. And I was like, what's the most important thing you do? He goes, eat breakfast. I'm like, come on, dude.
Wow.
The dumbest
He doesn't even do that.
Dumbest smart kid. He was, I don't know. And I said, no, son. The most important thing you will do is drive. If you drive, that's the most important thing you'll do. And so please be careful, because we here at Paranormal Roundtable have plenty of ghosts and ghost stories. We don't need more. And I'm being serious. When I was a young guy, in my early teens, one of my friends that I played football with, he died. His mother and my mother went to a business school together. And my mom got her business degree there at this place. And they were at school. at this business school when the news came that he had died in a car wreck. And I believe, if I remember correctly, it was like a Friday afternoon after school, just like it is today. And oddly enough, were we not just talking about this last night, Anthony?
Yeah. We were just talking about we was talking about what happened to your friend.
Yeah. It was really the first time in my life that I dealt with somebody like I had family members die, like my great aunt Agnes, who was a very sweet woman when I was real young. And then I had, like a few other, family members that were older people that, but not someone my age. Like when you're young, when you're like in your teens or whatever, or even in your early 20s, you think I'm invincible. Nothing's ever going to happen to me. I can't die. I don't think I had that because I had dealt with like passing. I had a puppy that my dad ran over on accident. Pretty sure it was an accident, but he ran over my puppy when I was little, and it was just, it crushed me. And I remember the finality of it, of being 7 years old, and go ahead. And they're messing with you, making more noise. But it was the finality of it. Like this is it. You're not going to see that anymore. It was a little border collie I had, and he was a sweet puppy, and I loved him, and he didn't have a long life. He got loose, and my dad, unalived him. It was horrible. And so I kind of understood it, but when this kid who died when I was, 13, and he passed away, my same grade, everything, it kind of hit home to me. Like, wow, this is real. There is a such thing as no more, and it was, he wasn't driving. He was in the back of an older kid's vehicle who was a 16-year-old. And then his sister ended up with brain damage. And I just remember, like, we were doing hit drills like the week before, like, it was so weird to me. I had just moved back to my hometown from the other town I was living in. And I just, it was like I had just seen him in football practice the week before, and then he was gone. And so I think that was the first time in my life that it really hit me like, hey, there's this death that can happen, and it's final. Which, in turn, I think it had a very profound effect on me and making me kind of pursue a little more, pay more attention to the spiritual side of life, because I knew that there was something else. This wasn't it. Never in a million years did I dream that I would see a werewolf, but, it happened. Which, on the book front, folks, the book is getting ready to go to the editor on Monday, and then it will be sent to the person that's going to do their job and put it all together, and it should be ready for sale by the end of July.
That's pretty exciting.
The first book, yeah. And then the second book should be ready, I think, a couple weeks after. And so my nose is running bad. I'm sorry, I hate to have to ask this on air, but
Yeah, no,
put the camera on you for a minute so I can take care of this.
yeah, no, my nose is running pretty bad too. Like whatever wolf has, I had it first, so, and I'm just getting over it. So at some point, I'm gonna have to stop and blow my nose too. I'm gonna have to walk out. So y'all gonna have to bear with us and excuse it.
2 days of working in an apartment that has mold in it.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure is what because you were working in it last week and you got sick, and then I did. And unfortunately, they're not willing to do what needs to be. Is there?
See what I'm talking about?
So here we go. Sorry about that, folks. It's embarrassing having to do that. I mean, not for me. I don't get embarrassed, but you might get secondhand embarrassment for me. Somebody told me that the other day. They're like, I get secondhand embarrassment for you, and I'm like, that's great because I don't get embarrassed. They're like, well, then you're a sociopath. I was like, no. There's two kinds of people who don't get embarrassed: sociopaths and people like me.
There's sociopaths and people who are not insecure.
They're like, you're arrogant. No, I'm confident. There's a difference. Arrogant people swagger around with no substance. You know, they're like, yeah, you shoot your mouth off. I back it up with facts. You know, some people, it's like the truth is just poison to them. They will do mental gymnastics round and around to avoid having to deal with the harsh reality of what is the truth. I had an argument with someone the other day about the nature of reality, once again, because these people just cannot stop. They want to believe in this paradigm. And so I had somebody send me a message and they asked me a question. And they asked me about the nature of reality and they asked me about God. And I'm going to say this again, and I'll say this. If I said it once, I'll say it 1,000. I said it 1,000 times. God to me is the creator, the source of all things. That's it. That's who he is. That's what he is. We cannot fathom him, and we don't. He doesn't have human characteristics. He doesn't. You know, there's all these different versions of him, and I don't care what anybody says. You can argue with me all the way home. It doesn't matter. Okay, I just don't believe in that all these stories of God are all really God. I think it's mankind trying to put God in a box and trying to relate to God in a human sense. But you're completely missing the words of Christ when you do that. And I catch hell from the Christians, and then I catch hell from the atheists and people who don't believe in. I get it on both ends. Oh, you're talking about religion too much. And it's not religion because I'm not religious. I believe in Christ. I follow him. And then I catch people, you know, that are like, you're a heretic. You're a this, you're a that. No, I'm a truth seeker. What are you? That's the question. So let me tell you what happened. We were talking last night, and we got on the subject of that fatal car wreck. Years ago, and I've said this before on my show, and I'll say it again, I had a few paranormal experiences as a child. Not a whole bunch. Like, I lived in a haunted house like when I was a kid. But like I've said before, and I'll say it again, most of it was centered, it messed with, like, my mother, my sister, my aunts, you know, my sister's friends would come over. It was like your mom, Anthony. Mm-hmm. It didn't mess with me as much. I just had a few incidents that I remember sticking out in my mind. But my friend Tommy, when I was a child, his house was haunted. And I'd been to his house, I think, a total of 4 times in all the years we were friends. And I started thinking about it the other day, and guess what? I figured something out. The last time I was at Tommy's house, we had a horrific experience. I didn't see anything, but I did hear something. And I'm going to tell you this ghost story because we started going down the rabbit hole last night, me and Anthony and Nellie, and we were listening to a show about somebody was talking about ghosts or something. And I was doing a little research, and we had to take time to eat, and we had a bunch of stuff going through the emails and all that. And I've talked about this before. This kid that he lived in a haunted house to my wife and to you, Anthony, and to you, Tony. But never. I don't. You know, we started talking about it. I was like, I don't think I've ever talked about it on the show. And there's a lot of stories that I still have that people have told me over the years that happened when I was young, and this is one of them. And here's what's really weird. I went down the whole journey in my mind and going through the timeline, and it was a very odd thing. I went over there for a sleepover, and there were, and I don't want to give everybody names because I don't know that these friends of mine, one of them's a chef now, he lives in Lake Charles, and the other one is a lifer in the military, and so anyway, it was me, my friend Ron. I'll give them names, like I'll just say Ron, Dave, and then Tommy. Okay. I'm not going to go beyond that. And then there was a kid named Ryan there that I didn't know, and I only had met him that one time, and he was literally the stepbrother of Tommy's cousin, Jill. And I remember her, and I remember, you know, that they were country bumpkin people, but the salt of the earth. His mother was kind of dingy. She was, and she used to do this She was so sweet. Like she would when we were staying over at somebody's house, we were kind of like a little group of kids. We're all from the same neighborhood except for Tommy. He was from school when he lived out in the country. And then our neighborhood, we all lived in the same neighborhood in that particular town. And she would drop by and bring us like cold fruit in the summertime. And I remember it because it was summer and you would get watermelon and she would have it all sliced up and have like a little, bag or whatever of it. And then she made this stuff called
Watermelon salt.
Watermelon salt. What it was, from the best I could remember, was a lemon lime juice with vinegar and some salt. And it was just mixed together, and then there was something else in it. I can't remember what it was, but it had a really good flavor. I think it was Reds. I think she put a little Kool-Aid in it or something, like for flavoring. And then when you put that onto the watermelon with the sweetness of the juice or whatever, it was so good. And I remember as a kid thinking, "Oh, this is amazing," whatever. So one day, we all knew that Tommy's house was haunted, right? But I had not really personally had any real experiences there. So we go for a sleepover for his birthday, which was in the middle of the summer. And as fate would have it, it was exactly 1 month from my birthday. I was a month older than him, exactly. And so we all went over there for a sleepover. We swam at my friend Ron's house, and then we all went over to Tommy's house, and we had a sleepover party. It was only, I think, the third time I'd ever been there. And his stepdad was a really nice guy named Clyde, and I remember him. And looking back on it too now as an adult, I think he had narcolepsy or something. Like he was always asleep. He was always sleeping. He'd take us fishing, and he would just go to sleep in the sun. Didn't care. He was just like, and I was like, "Your stepdad sleeps a lot, dude." But I didn't realize he would work on tractors and stuff. Like people would bring their large equipment, and he would work on. He had a hangar. Mm-hmm. And so he probably worked all the time.
At night, probably.
Even at night, yeah. And I would he would be out there late, and then he'd come in and he'd go to, he was working outside or he was asleep. And so this particular night, his parents had gone into town to go do something. I don't remember, the movies or something. Now, he had an older sister who was supposed to be babysitting us. She was like 17 or something. And I mean, I think at that time I was like 12. And I wasn't even living in the same town anymore, but I was invited to go out there for the sleepover. I was living in my hometown. And I remember going over there. And this is a creepy story. But like I said, it wasn't a whole lot that happened to me. So I can't really say like this was my story. But I was around it. You know what I mean? And I could tell you what happened. So I just remember she was supposed to be babysitting us. And some car pulled up. Like 30 minutes after his parents left, and she got in the car with some boy and took off. So we were all alone on our own, okay, at this house out in the middle of the country. And there was only one other thing that ever happened that made me think this guy's house is haunted. And that was a couple years before when we had a sleepover. His mother had gone to the grocery store and said, "Hey, I'm going to we had Brookshire Brothers." I said, "I'm going to Brookshire Brothers. Do you guys want anything?" It was in town. It wasn't, because he lived in between two towns. And she was going to the one town to go to the grocery store. And I don't remember, one of the boys said, "Hey, can you get some pears?" I'm like, I didn't ask for pears. I just remember. But in the middle of the night, we were all playing Nintendo. And I remember, if you guys probably don't remember this, but there was a video game that came out before Super Mario Brothers called Mario Brothers. It was the original Mario Brothers. And I just remember we were playing that, and we were having like a little tournament or whatever. And I get up and I go into the other room to grab some fruit because I was kind of hungry. And I went into the refrigerator to grab some of that watermelon salt, because even though it wasn't, we put it on other fruit too. We just called it. We didn't have no name for it. We just called it that. And we'd call it watermelon juice and whatever. And so I was going to put some on a pear, and I look, and the pear, she had gotten these pears a couple hours before, and I helped her bring the groceries in. And I remember taking the pears and putting them into the fruit bowl, trying to be helpful as a little kid, and they were hard, like solid. When I mean, like they weren't ripe. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like you needed to wait a day or so, And we were going to be there for the weekend, so whatever. But I go that night, like 2 or 3 in the morning, and they were all molded. Just the pears. Like the oranges were untouched. There was some other fruit in the fridge and stuff. And his mother she always had lots of snacks and things like that. And she tried to give us healthy snacks. She was like a nurse. Yeah, but that was really weird. And so I went into his bedroom and back to the bedroom with the other 3 kids, whatever. And I'm like, dude, those pears they're rotten. And so one of my friends, he gets up and he's like, what? So he goes and he looks, and we were like, dude, they looked like they had been there for a year. I mean, they were shriveled up and rotten with mold. So that was the one thing that had happened. And so then Tommy says, oh, yeah, that happens sometimes here. And so it's like mental note to self, don't sleep over at Tommy's house.
Don't eat food at Tommy's
Yeah,
house.
and besides that, we're out in the middle of nowhere, and there's not a whole lot to do out there, because his mother wouldn't let us go out and shoot guns or anything like that, like we could do at some other people's houses. And my house, I mean, I always had fun because my mom was she was pretty cool. She was a workaholic, but she would always like lay the board games out and stuff so that we could play.
Kept y'all busy at least.
Yeah, she would take us to the store, and we would rent like VHS tapes, and we would literally watch, like, this is Megatron from Transformers. I'll show you this guy, right? We would watch like G.I. Joe, Transformers, He-Man on VHS. We would have them all there. My mom was cool like that. She would make popcorn, order pizza, whatever. I had friends, as a little kid, but it was like out there you couldn't. You had to go into town to get anything, and it was a long drive, and it was boring. So and plus it was haunted, and so I never put a lot of stock into it as a kid. I remember, I guess I met him when I was like 8, and we were friends for years. But here's a really weird thing that happened. I was there for his birthday party, like when I was like 12. And there was a bunch of kids there in the afternoon, in the middle of summer. Now, we used to go back to school, after Labor Day. This was not what now, would you go back to school? It's like August 13th or some ridiculousness. This is just, I feel bad for the children nowadays. It's ridiculous. You don't even have a summer. So I end up like being at his house, and his sister took off with some guy, she's a teenager, and I'm like 12 or whatever. And the oldest kid there was 13. He had just turned 13, and that was that Ryan kid. I didn't know him that well. He was a nice kid, but I never interacted with him ever again in my life. It was like, you've done that before. You've been playing somewhere as a kid, and there'll be some kid there, and then you'll say, well, goodbye. And you think, one of these days maybe you'll see him again. Nope.
Yeah.
Yep, literally never saw him again in my life. It was like, 34 years later, nope, never saw him again. See ya. But anyway, he was there, and I remember we were playing video games, and I don't remember exactly what we were playing. I know it was Nintendo, like baseball or something. We were having a little tournament, and because I remember we were writing things down on a piece of paper. And there was like 4 or 5 of us left from I think there were like 15, 16 kids that came to the little get together. And we had like a slip and slide and a pinata and a bunch of stuff. And then after that, it was like a few of us that stayed behind that had known him for years. And my parents didn't want to have to drive all the way from my hometown to pick me up. So they're like, you're on your own. You're staying out there. Weird thing, I had just moved back to my hometown for the 2nd or 3rd time. I don't know. And this is because my home life was screwed up, and my mom and dad couldn't decide whether they wanted to love each other, hate each other, or both, and just live together or not live together. So my home life was totally screwed. And I think at that time it was about when they had split up finally for the last time. And so I was sitting there at his house, and my good friend, who I had met, Keith, who I had met, and you met him. Mm-hmm. He was the guy I hung out with all the time because we lived close to each other out in this area called Western Hills, out in the middle of nowhere, clear on the other side of this town. But I didn't live in that town anymore. And that's important, and I'll tell you why. And if I'm remembering this story correctly, because sometimes I get a little confused, because I am, bear with me, folks, I'm old. But I remember, like, one of the kids, I think it was Dave, he got up to walk into the kitchen to grab something. And he screamed, and he comes running back into the room. And I just remember looking down the hallway, and all I saw was darkness. But I did hear what sounded like something growl. And then Tommy, it's his house. I mean, he's the one that deals with this all the time. And he stands up, and he's holding his Nintendo controller, and he's like shaking. And I just remember thinking, like, why is this kid shaking? Like, what's going on here? You know, like, what is this? You know, like, what was that? And everybody is like freaking out. And I was like, what is that? And Tommy goes, there's a devil that lives in this house. And I was like, okay, that's great. So the devil is down the hallway? And he was like very adamant. He goes, do you remember the rotten fruit? And I was like, yeah. And he goes, okay, well, it does things like that, you know? He goes, but sometimes it'll grab you. When he said that, like the other 4 kids, like scared the living crap out of all of us, dude. We're like, what? So I specifically remember like just going over to the door and closing it because I was one of the kids that was like one of those take charge kind of kids, you know what I mean? Like I'll take charge. And I was like, okay, we got to get the hell out of this house, dude. We can't go that way. You know, I was like, do you have a phone in here? And he's like, no, it's in the hallway. And of course, back then you didn't have cell phones. The phone was like this on a long cord,
Yep.
and it was on the wall.
Landline.
Thank you for the donation, Barry, and the person that donated earlier too. Who was that?
I think that was Barry too.
Okay. Thank you for the donation. Donations are not expected, but they are greatly appreciated, especially right now. And be sure to grab your conference tickets. Josh Turner, PRTpodcast.com, patreon.com/PRTpodcast. Join the Patreon. You get a huge swag bag. And it's greatly, greatly appreciated. Heck, it's I'd do it if I was, you know, not already hosting the show. But anyways, I closed the door, and I wasn't I wasn't like the biggest, strongest, like, you know, the boss or anything like that. I was just, I always consider myself like a normal kid. I didn't become more alpha male-ish until I was older, because people would mess with me. You have no choice, you know, you have to fight. But this was back when I was just a normal kid, but I always kind of was the one that was, I think I was a little more brave than the other kids. Not because I wanted to be, but because everybody else was scared. And I wasn't the biggest kid either. That would have been that kid Ryan. He was bigger than us, but he was scared. He was shaking. I was like, this kid was not a fighter. And I pushed the door, and so that kid Ryan, I just remember him going up to the window, and he starts to open the window like, we need to get the heck out of this house. And this was not a funny, jokey thing. I mean, we were terrified out of our minds. And then we hear this like something moving on the, you know, up against the door. And then it sounded like a smack, like somebody's hand smacked either the wall or the door. I don't know. I was halfway out the window at this point. And so we were crawling out the window one by one to get out of this room, which I don't know what we were going to accomplish. His door didn't lock. So it's like if this thing wanted to get in the room, it was probably going to get in the room. But I just thought this is the best chance we have. Let's just, Maggie Brooks says, take authority over your home in Jesus' name. Yes, but at that time I was a kid. And I wasn't thinking about anything. But yeah, I was already praying in my head. I was trying to get the heck out of there. And so we were running out into the night. And a couple of the kids were like barefooted, you know, like we're running out there like a bunch of fools. And I said, dude, you know, we need to call somebody. Well, his dad had a phone line in the hangar, which is like right outside. And he goes, my dad's got a phone out there. So we all run to the hangar. And he had guns there too. But we couldn't get into them. They were all locked up in a gun cabinet because we tried. And so I don't know what we were going to shoot. I mean, it's ridiculous. So we go out there, and I call my friend Keith, and I said, hey, Keith. I said, what's going on? It was like a Friday night or something. It was the weekend. And it was the weekend of his birthday. Like, I think his birthday was like on Thursday, but we celebrated it, you know, whatever. And I said, hey, man, I'm over here. I'm at my friend Tommy's house. Can you come get us? And the reason I asked him was because Keith was already like 15. And if his parents weren't home, his dad didn't know he had a key to the car. Because I used to live over there in Western Hills where he was at. I said, hey, can you come pick us up? And he goes, well, he goes, I know Tommy, but I don't really know him that well. He's a couple years older than us. And he's like, where are you? Give me directions. And I told him County Road, such and such. And so he found us. And he goes, oh, okay. You know, my friend Stuart lives, you know, close, you know. So he goes and he shows up with his friend Stuart. Now, Keith has been one of those people that was into firearms for a long time. It was always.
I mean, that's how I first met Keith.
Yeah, he took us to the gun range, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so he comes in there waving around his .22 pistol because we used to go out in the middle of the night and shoot these guns when I was like not even 12, like 9, 10, you know, whatever. And he kind of was like, I'm gonna go in there and I'm gonna take care of this demon, whatever.
Gonna go Rambo on it.
Yeah, so he goes in there with Stuart, this other kid, and that's his middle name. I'm not gonna say his first name because I'll tell you why later. So they go into the house with Tommy and Ryan, and Ryan's scared. You could scared to death, right? And me and Dave and Ron all get in the back seat of the car, his dad's Bronco, whatever. And we're like, we're just going to hang out in the little SUV, whatever, while y'all go and do what you got to do. I wasn't going back in that house. And now, when we're sitting there, the one kid tells me, he says, I saw something with red eyes, glowing red eyes. And Dave was like, isn't that what Tommy said that he sees there, And I'm sitting there going like, dude, why are we out here, dude? Why are we out here? This is,
We should leave.
And yeah, and I was like, dude. Then Ronnie tells me, he goes, I threw something down the hallway. It was like those cornhole bean bags where you throw the whatever.
Oh, yeah.
He threw one down the hallway. When he tells me that, I'm like, what? He goes, dude, I saw it and I didn't know if it was real, So, when Dave comes back screaming, scared, he goes, I threw something down the hallway and it hit something solid. And so it was all I could think. It was like looking back the other day, I was watching that Kevin Hart video, and he's like, why would you throw something when you don't know what it is? And I just kept saying that. I was like, why would you throw a beanbag at this demon when you don't know what it is? I just kept saying that. I was like, what is wrong with you? He's like, I don't know. I wanted to know what would happen. I said, you see what would happen. It's attacking people, But we were just, it really didn't attack us. But here's the weird thing. And it is very odd that we saw that on the way home earlier because everything's sort of connected, They went inside the house. Me, Ron, and Dave stay outside. 4 people go inside the house. My friend, couldn't have been more than 15 years old, he's only like 2.5 years older than me, right? And he's brandishing a .22 pistol, and he's walking in there. And we hear bang, and we're sitting out in this little Jeep, whatever, or Bronco, whatever. And so we start debating about who should get up and go in there. And I said, I'm not going in there. And I said, and I suggest nobody else go in there either. Susie, thank you for that donation. You're always generous, But I'm like, I'm not going in there. And so what ended up happening was everybody comes running out of the house scared after a few minutes, and I thought they shot something. Well, Stuart comes and he opens the door, and he jumps on top of me. And he's a tall, skinny kid. He's not a big guy. But he jumped right on top of me. And I was like, dude, you're like sitting on top. He's like just hysterical, dude. This kid's like 14 going on 15, whatever. Keith gets in the driver's seat. If I remember correctly, it was the kid Ryan or whatever squeezed in between us. And then I think Tommy crawled into the back. Now you're talking about 4 kids in the back seat. I mean, we're not real big kids, So we all fit in this car, in this Bronco, whatever. And somebody crawled into the back, And I just remember being squished in there, and then we all just took off driving at first like in a circle. And I was like, dude, what did y'all shoot? And Keith was like, what are you talking about? I was like, what did you shoot? What was the noise that I heard? And he had no answer. So then we get out onto the county road and we're driving. They stop the vehicle, and he's like, dude, why do you keep saying that? And Ron's like, dude, we heard a shot. And everybody's confused, except Stuart's completely just, he's gone, dude. Like, he's in another realm. And he's just like, something grabbed me, something, whatever. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, what did y'all shoot? And he goes, dude. And he pulls the gun out and he opens it and he goes, all 6 rounds still in the chamber. What are you talking about? I didn't use 1 bullet. And I'm going like, what in the hell did we hear? And so me and the other 2 kids that were outside, the smart ones that didn't go inside, we heard a gunshot. And it was clear, loud as day. I mean, clear as day. So something happened. So then we ended up like driving around, and we went over to Stuart's house, and he lived out in the country. And what was really crazy though was like we had this little get together, whatever. A year later, okay, something really bad happened. And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you what it was. My friend who died in the car wreck. It was a year later. I was 13. We had just gone back to school. And I remember when I was telling you the story last night, Anthony, I was wrong. I was thinking that it happened, that this happened exactly a year later. It wasn't. It was in August because I remember his birthday.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, but it was a little over a year later. It was like in October. And it was really, really sad and tragic. Well, here's what happened to Stuart. Stuart says he was walking down the hallway, and he looks to his left, and there in the kitchen, because this thing seemed to kind of hang out in the kitchen, whatever, something reached out of the darkness and grabbed his arm. He had full-on bruise. You could see what looked like claw marks on his arm. Something grabbed him and pulled him, literally, almost pulled him down. And the two other kids were they witnessed this, but they didn't see what it was that grabbed him. For the next year, he was plagued by nightmares and just all kinds of stuff. And at a very young age, he started to drink. None of us were like drinking. I mean, we were little kids, whatever. But he started drinking. And he wasn't really my friend. He was more my friend's friend. But he was the one driving that truck a year later when the kid who, I'm not going to say his name, but when the kid who died, his mother and my mother went to the business school together. And they came around a curve going too fast on a Friday evening. And it was a Friday night after a football game. After a varsity football game. And they were out on a county road out in the middle of the country. And it was a bad wreck, and he died. The guy that was driving that vehicle, that thing grabbed him a year before that happened. So I don't know. And I'm not saying that that's what caused the wreck, but he just seemed like he was never the same after that. He gave a description to me of this thing, like probably, I would say several months after that, he gave me a description over at my friend's house. And he said that this thing looked like it was squatted down. He got a good look at this thing. It had horns that were kind of curved upward, and it looked just like a demon. Now, Ghostbusters was around at that time, and when he described it, it kind of reminded me of one of those dog-looking things with the horns. And so I ended up going back to that school briefly when I was in high school for I think not even a semester, like a month and a half or something, like a 6-week period or something. And I had him in one of my classes. And he, after that accident where my friend died, he was never the same. This kid was he went off the rails. And I don't want to say people's names, and I don't want to get people involved or whatever. But it was really sad, and we were in art class, and I remember this guy had drawn this picture of this demon. I think Gozer is his name from the Ghostbusters or something like that. Can I get tissue? Yeah. And he said that it looked kind of like that, but more demonic, more evil, and it had these weird backward bent legs, kind of like a Dogman, but it was like hooves. And this thing grabbed him. It had arms, hands, like a human, but really elongated. And when it grabbed him, he said that he felt a shock of cold go through his body. I apologize, folks. I am like sitting here trying to do this show with a serious cold.
I'm fixing to have to do the same thing.
You know what's interesting about that? I don't know if you remember ever at my mom's house how, if anyone's familiar with Buddhism, we have kind of like a shrine type thing where we have some of the gods that are placed there. Then we'll offer them things like food, and we'll burn incense to them. But one thing that was always really interesting to me, and I'm pretty sure you remember this, Wolf, is that every time we'd offer it food, like almost instantly, the food would change in some way. Like
Anthony remembers that too.
Like the Sprite, for instance. As soon as we would pour Sprite and we would offer it to it, the Sprite would immediately go flat. It'd lose all flavor, no more bubbles. It was just like regular.
Yeah, and like food too.
Yeah,
like,
food was the same.
We ate Thanksgiving one time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because we tried the food after it was offered to the
spirit.
Yeah, the spirit,
which was your mom's brother.
Yeah.
And it was just like eating like a flavorless texture.
Yeah,
it's weird.
Yeah, and it's interesting because the Muslims believe in Islam the same thing. If you leave food out and you leave it uncovered, the jinn can go and they can take the food. Now they don't eat the food, but they take all of the nutrients out of it. So when you go to eat the food, it's nothing. And I remember specifically your sister Lynn.
Mm-hmm.
You want to tell that story real quick?
What are you talking about when she tempted it?
When she at Thanksgiving, we were all sitting at the table.
The only thing I remember is that we were all sitting at the table, and then she kept like pretending or something like that wasn't happening.
She didn't pretend.
No, I'm not sure what you're talking.
You must not have been paying attention. You remember that, Anthony? Tell him.
I don't think I do. What?
We were all. Y'all don't remember
What
that?
did you do?
Well, you got to explain.
We were all
first.
sitting there at Thanksgiving at the table, and Lynn reached over and took a bite out of the stuffing.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I said that.
Yeah.
Well, he just said that he don't remember that happening.
Because I was confused about. There was another time where I don't know if you were there, but Lynn was like, "This is what I remember specifically with the Sprite." Is that Lynn was like acting like it wouldn't change that quick. So like my mom poured some Sprite out and said, "Just give it a second," and then she let her brother drink it, and then Lynn took a sip of it and was like, "Oh my gosh," and freaked out. And then that's the last thing I remember with her. But yeah.
And Dick Richards says you have an altar to pagan gods, bro. Yeah, that altar was not in my house, and it was an altar. It's not gods the way you think that they're gods, and you don't worship them.
No,
and I never participated in it at all, so don't blame me. Tony's the little weirdo here that
Oh, that's my mom.
But Tony's actually Christian. Look, what I'm going to tell you though, it's sort of like an honor of your ancestors. Because they will be around. A lot of Buddhists believe that they will be around until you die.
Yeah,
like,
it was more to her like.
Because there were pictures of your grandparents.
There was a lot of my grandma, my grandparents, so then it was also like brothers or people that have died in the past. It wasn't like we had altars like to specific gods or anything like that. It was more like just a kind of way to, remember them and also give like.
Hold on. Hey, Dick, no, dude. He said, this is why your house is crazy haunted. Okay, so you're telling me, Dick, now I'm getting kind of offended because, and I like you, Dick, you're a good guy. You're always here, but let me just clarify something. And you've been on my show too. You know me. Dude, that's not why my house is crazy haunted. I just moved into this house in December.
He's under the impression that this altar was in our house.
It wasn't in our house.
This was in Tony's house because his
When
mother...
He was a kid.
His mother is a Buddhist. This is why they had that. Not, we didn't have some kind of Buddhist altar in our. I wouldn't even know how to set anything like that up. So,
the point, Dick. I was unhaunted for 15 years. All right, I had lived in a haunted house, and now I'm living in one again. Now think about it. I have a show about the paranormal. If I wanted to pull some crap and say, "Oh, my house is haunted," and try to get people to believe, wouldn't I have done that 4 years ago when I started the show? Wouldn't I be like, "Hey guys, I'm living in a haunted house. I've been going around with the phone and taking photos stuff"? No. And I'm not mad at you, Dick. People jump to conclusions. And
yeah, he said I misunderstood you, but it's obviously doing something if the Sprite is changing. Yeah, I mean that's kind of what we were saying. Is like it's that was kind of the point of it, but it wasn't that we were offering to specific gods or anything. It was more like we're offering food to our ancestors, people that died in our family,
Yeah.
so that they could share in our meal with us. So I don't know.
And Valerie Guy says still idol worship. Well, there weren't no idols. There were no little statues
We
of
weren't
idols that we
worshiping
were
them
worshiping,
either.
and nobody was worshiping that. But because that's not how Buddhism works. But there again, it's not my religion, and I'm not going to lay insults and say that everybody, because one of the things that people don't understand is that some Christians actually worship Jesus, and you're not supposed to worship Jesus. And that's one of the biggest problems that Islam has with Christianity is that they believe that Christ, he's the one that's going to return, right? They believe in all that. But they believe that we worship Jesus. And I told them, I pray to God through Christ. I don't worship Jesus.
You're not supposed to worship a man, and what we worship is the spirit that was in the man Jesus Christ, which is God.
Well, wait a minute now. That's a little different because let's put it this way. Thank you for the donations, folks. I appreciate it. The Word made flesh. But Jesus is very specific. When you read, just go and read Jesus' words, okay? And do yourself a favor and get the hell away from just that one book, the King James Version, and go and read some more. Because let me tell you something, and I'm not bagging on Masons because a lot of Masons don't know what they're doing, but the King James Version of the Bible is very Masonic. I'm sorry to say that. If you don't believe me, don't believe me. If you want to argue it, argue it. But why do you think that there's 33 degrees to Masonry? Jesus died at the age of 33. Come on, dude. Masons will argue all day, and I'm sure there's some good Masons out there. I know several Masons. Some of my friends are Masons, and they're very nice people, but they don't really understand. It's like when Christ was trying to explain to people that and there was like, and I tell people this, and they just do not understand what I'm trying to tell them, and it offends people. And it's like when Jesus is kind of like, he never says to worship Yahweh, okay? That's sort of, a red flag, but people still think that Yahweh, that because that was the God of the Hebrews, that they called him Yahweh, but they also called him Jehovah and all these other names, Elohim. And I've heard people pray, and they're like, you are El Shaddai, you are Elohim, you are Jehovah, you are Yahweh, and they're saying all this stuff, and I'm going like, okay, you just mentioned the name of multiple different gods. If you only understood, I want to make a Rumble account so I can get on there and say whatever needs to be said. I was on Rumble this past week, and it was mind-blowing, all the crap that was on there. And I don't want to be just another wacko cranking out videos and getting like, hey, there's a man on the wing of this plane. I'm not doing that. And I'm very sane, okay? But I'm not going to tell you something that I'm not done researching myself because my journey is not over. And somebody asked me the other day, well, don't you feel like you're going to go to hell and you're leading people to hell? And I'm like, no. Period. I don't sit there and dwell on the rewards of heaven or the torments of hell. Because if you do that, you're not focused on the overarching goal that needs to be focused on. And that is doing right by yourself, your fellow man, and most importantly, God, the creator, the source of all things. And then everybody wants to throw rocks and stones at everybody else's religion, and you don't even understand their religion. You haven't read their religion, and you don't speak several languages, which is most important. You should do that. And then Barry says he don't think he was 33 when he passed. He was in his 40s. Well, the Masons believe he was. Okay, so that's it. Doesn't really matter. We're not going to get into a Bible sermon because then, I'll write a book about it. Okay, when I'm done with this, I'm writing 2 books. Let me get through the next 2 books that I'm going to write, and then I'll write a book about ancient civilizations, and I'll bring it all together. And then you can tell me whether I'm crazy or not. Okay? So for now, let's move on. Anyway, what we were saying about these, it all ties together. Bottom line is, story I was telling, guy gets grabbed. A year later, somebody dies in a car wreck that a vehicle he was driving. And, to this day, and I'm going to be completely honest, I thought I saw a shadow being in the window that had horns. And the reason I didn't say that in the story earlier, and Anthony, what did I say last night? Explain that. You don't remember what I said about the shadow being in the window?
I don't remember.
Man,
I mean,
there goes my credibility.
I was
Hey, totally killed
dude,
it
I
right
was
there.
exhausted when
Okay,
you
I'm
told
not.
the
I don't need
story.
excuses. I'm just saying, if you don't remember, you don't remember it. What I said was sometimes when you see things in the window, and I told Anthony this last night, but I guess he was tired. We were talking about this, and I said I'm going to talk about this on the show. Okay, but you can see things, and then maybe the thing was planted in my mind by my friends who were talking about it because they said they saw that. So later on, after an incident happens, your memories are very fallible. And it's not your fault. It's not my fault. I was a kid. Okay? But I don't use that and say, oh, I had an experience. I saw a demon, because even though in my mind, I remember sitting in that Bronco or whatever vehicle it was. I think it was a Bronco. But then again, with the Mandela effect, who knows what it is now. But I'm looking over there toward the house, and I remember seeing what looked like a demonic, shadowy something move up to the window. But like I told you and Nelly last night, and it's unfortunate you don't remember this, but like I said, and you and Nelly kind of confirmed this last night, that, yeah, memories can be kind of implanted in your mind because there's a consensus that that's what everybody saw. So somehow you're remembering because people told you that's what you saw.
Well, also,
Yeah, it's like you build an image in your mind.
fear does a lot. I mean, how many times have you been in a room by yourself and you look in the corner and you think you see somebody, but then it's just like a ruffled shape of like random things assorted that you're just like, oh my gosh, that's a person. And it's just because, you're by yourself, you're scared. So
Yeah, the one
you already
time,
had all that fear in you. So then any shadow that you would have seen, you would have probably oh man, what could it be? You would have been already on the lookout. But I'm sure, like, that's the thing, is like you could have seen something, but then it also is like, was it your mind playing tricks on you?
Well, and I remember, like, the reason I don't know for sure if that's really what I saw, and I don't like claiming something I didn't see, is because I don't know if it was everybody's consensus of what this thing looked like. My friend Tommy stuck by his story. Here's a weird thing. There's an episode I did with my friend Tony Duran, who came on the show. And that was the weird episode, because then Nick, who was writing a book, and he rented a room here, he got in halfway through the show and just kind of started talking, and we went in another direction because that's how the show goes. And it was a podcast episode. And it was called Hellhounds of Taylor, Texas, or something like that. And we saw something when I was 17, which was 2 years, not to the day, but 2 years, almost 2 years, minus a couple of weeks, middle of October. We saw this thing that looked like a black, like a puppet guy walking around with a bunch of black dogs. I don't know what it was, but I had 3 people with me: my friend Oscar, my friend Jason, and my friend Tony Duran. And I'm pretty sure Tony's already been on the show once, and I think I can probably get at least one of the other guys to come on the show. One of them is not interested because it scared the crap out of him, and I can understand. He doesn't want to entertain anything like that, and I respect that. But if you look at the timeline, that was 4 years after my friend died, almost to the day. My friend that died in the car wreck. So 4 years after, I say almost to the day because it was after midnight when it happened. Very weird. The night, now this is my friend Heather. She owns a chiropractic business, and I say she's probably the best chiropractor in the world. She's very good at what she does. And I went to go visit her at the local grocery store, H-E-B, when I was in my hometown when I was 17. I went to go say hi, and I said, hey, I'm going to go to your house. I'm going to wait. Her stepdad was a drinking maniac, and he was out there, yelling at and doing whatever he does. And so I didn't want to deal with it. So, and she's a really good person. She's one of my wife's best friends now, and she's always been one of my best friends. And I'd say she's probably all of our good friend. She has a very good business. If you're ever in Austin, you need your back cracked. It's called Amazing Relief Chiropractic. I'm giving her a plug. Go check her out. But she was working, and I went to see her, and I've known her since I was a little child. Our parents grew up together.
Pretty much your best friend.
Yeah, she was one of my best friends forever. And I said, hey, we're going to be by your house. And so that's what we were doing. We were waiting, and that's when we saw that. Well, what's really weird and what really brings it full circle was that my friend Tommy, who I hadn't seen in a few years, was there at that HEB because he was dating a girl from Taylor. And I was walking through there, and he was with this girl, and I saw this, as they say, kicker, the bad word, kicker, And I see this kid, and I'm like, that's got to be Tommy. And I'm with my friends, and I'm like, hey, what's up, Tommy? He turned around. He's like, hey, man, what's up, dude? And like, he's wearing a cowboy hat and everything, and he's with this girl, and we start talking, and we have this long conversation, probably half an hour, just standing there. The girl he's with, I went to school with her. You can see she's getting kind of, tired, whatever, ready to go. And he says, well, we'll be in touch. And then I didn't see him again until I was like 28 or 26 or something like that. Thank you for that donation, Ozzy Sue. We appreciate it. It's greatly appreciated. Thank you, everyone who donated. And so, if you...
Bless you.
Can you...
You want another?
Oh, yes, please. All right, you can post back on me.
Can you get me one too?
I'm sorry, folks. We were battling
No,
this.
I'm not good. That's why I asked you for one.
Well, he thinks you are. I mean, maybe you should pay more attention, then you'd be better. So here's what's messed up. Here's what's messed up. If you follow the timeline, though, this demonic entity grabs somebody in a house. And I didn't, it's weird because I had not put it all together until just recently, like a couple months back. I was literally just driving, and I was literally coming back from doing the mail-offs for the Patreon. What?
Man, come on, dude.
Dude, are you joking with us right now?
Look at this. Look at this. Look at what you see. That this is one ply.
I got a big
and
nose,
it's
dude.
like, look at what he brings us.
Oh
The blowing nose.
Oh my gosh.
Like I'm an animal.
Look at this, and I'm blowing my nose on the air. Please stop.
Well, I'm about to be blowing mine on the air too. Everyone blows their nose. Who cares?
Yeah, but I don't want to do it on the live stream. It's rude.
I'll do it on the live stream.
Because your generation has no manners. Put it back on me.
I'll take one for the team here.
Yeah, that's fine. We don't want to see it. Sorry about that, folks. But anyway, the point... Okay, can I finish? The point being is that you have an incident that happened involving certain individuals. And then a year later, somebody is killed. I don't know if that has I can't say that had something to do with it. I think it did. And then a few years after that, I see this guy with these black dogs, and I happened to see Tommy. He wasn't the one that was grabbed that night, but he had been grabbed by that being before. And so you're sitting there going like, what is this? It's really hard to explain. And it can't really be ignored because it is something that was, it's really creepy. And we can't really fathom how the spirit world works. And like I said, I never really knew for sure if I saw that in the window or if it was something that was in my mind. When I tell you that I had an encounter with a creature or a spirit or something, I want to be 100%. My wife saw what I know it looked like a Bigfoot from the side, but I didn't get a good look at it. She did when I was out working at a place called Row Lane. I'll tell you right now that if you told me if I saw a Bigfoot or I didn't see a Bigfoot, I would say I did see one. But I don't go around and say I had a Bigfoot encounter because I don't know. I have to be sure. I have to be like, and so when people, they say these little nasty things about me and they say, oh, this guy's seen every cryptid, no, I haven't. And I don't go around saying I have. But I have had lots of encounters and with spiritual things, which I think it's spiritual. But a lot of people have had the same thing. And we do a lot of judging as people. I catch myself doing it. The other day, this guy was telling me a story. And Tony, if you remember this, I was telling you about the guy who had in the tub, who had the black stuff. Yeah. Okay. I could have been like, dude, you sound crazy. And maybe 5 or 6 years ago,
It was bizarre.
It was
And
bizarre,
If you
but
would
you know,
have, if you would have told me that story at the very beginning of us doing our show, I definitely would have looked at you like,
yeah, we're not telling that.
I don't know if we should tell that one yet. Like that
Yeah,
one,
like it's too much, man.
It was
wasn't
a
until
lot.
we got more encounters that were like putting it together.
and we have a lot of those too, though.
Yeah.
And like, if we definitely like had such a closed-minded view against all of those, we would miss out on this big old show where you could connect all these different things together.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that being said, folks, we're gonna get our guest on here and talk about more weird stuff. And let me hope that I don't overtalk them and do all kinds of crap, because apparently I'm just a horrible host. I talk over my guests. I yell like I got shut up. I do that to my guests, apparently. And if you go on to certain platforms, oh boy. But I do want to clear the air about one. Hold on, I can't.
It's not working.
Yeah, I'm trying to get this going here.
She said, "Josh, you suck." She's kidding though.
Yeah, I'm sure I do. I'm terrible.
Oh, speaking of, if we can get this out before we get our guest on, because I made the mistake of going on the Reddit, and because that's where all the smart people go to express their
Don't even
opinions.
bother.
And yeah, so apparently there's like these rumors going around that my uncle Wolf here, he had to be told apparently to sit down and shut up twice at the conference because you were talking while the speakers were giving their presentation. So someone checked you at your own conference and made you sit down and shut up and put you in your place. So supposedly that happened. And then, what else were they saying? Like,
Oh yeah, let me.
I can
like you
clarify
were
that.
saying some stuff about some people.
Yeah, go ahead and
that's
just
why
send
they
it,
didn't want
send
to
it
go
over
the
to me
conference.
so I can get this done, folks. We didn't. I didn't even want to bring this up. I wasn't even going to talk about it, but I think Anthony, he had a good point. It does need to be addressed because an admin of a very large Dogman group reached out to me and said they weren't coming to my conference because there were rumors that I didn't want them there, and that I had said a bunch of bad stuff, nasty things about them. And I told her that's absolutely insane. I never said I didn't want this person at my conference. In fact, she runs the second biggest Dogman. I mean, like, I would never do that. And then another one got in touch with me and said that people were saying this and saying that. That never happened, folks. Nobody ever told me I had to be told to shut up and sit down twice. Like, what? First of all, it's my conference. And so if I'm up there and I'm talking or whatever, who's going to sit there and tell you to sit down and shut up? But I will tell you what happened. The first time, it was because all of the vendors were in the same room. We're not going to have that problem this year. So the vendors were all in the same room as the speakers. And I was sitting there with my arms crossed like this, just watching. I think it was Ken or Lyle, one of them two. I think it was Ken. And I was just watching his presentation. I'd seen it before, and you guys were dealing with a customer or something that were buying merchandise, as were several other people, D.A. Roberts, Ron Murphy, Kenny Irish, whatever, Barton. People were buying merchandise. And so some woman turned around, and she had a good reason to be upset. I don't know who she is. I wasn't saying a word. She turned around and looked at me, and she looked at my direction and goes, "Can y'all be quiet? I paid good money for this. Can you please shut up?" And I just threw my hands up, and I was like, yeah, she's got a point. People need to keep it down. People are trying to speak. I wasn't speaking.
That's what I find funny too, because like
I wasn't even talking.
she was talking to us because me, Anthony, and Alex were dealing, or not Alex, me and Anthony were dealing with the merchandise, and we were talking loudly.
Well, at the same time, though, DA was dealing
like
with
we were
people
all
too,
selling
and so
stuff.
was Barton.
So like she was yelling at us, not you.
And she looked right at me, though, and I guess maybe to do something. So I said, hey, guys, everybody keep it down. The second time it was that it came up that somebody had to go up and say, hey, be quiet, was when I believe that was when Lyle was on because the Ken was talking when I got up there. I had to walk up to the stage and literally tell the crowd, "Can you please shut up?" Okay, because people, especially people in the back, which is why you should get VIP tickets, they can't hear what this man is saying, and it is extremely rude. And there were a couple people that were in the audience that were just continually doing it, and so I said that, and I asked people to be quiet and have some respect. So then these people go on to Reddit, right?
Yeah.
And then they went into some groups and trolls, is what they are, but they really have a lot of time on their hands. They really do. You really need to get a life.
Yep. Hollister said it right here. I distinctly recall seeing Wolf telling others to be quiet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then so they go on to these channels, and I believe there was like a big argument that erupted on there, and Darkwater said something to some people on there on Reddit, whatever. I don't know. It was a big mess. I looked at it and was like, who cares? But you and Nelly both said that it should be addressed, and I think it should be addressed. And so I'm doing it now. And you know, I'm not going to waste so much time on that, but these are lies, folks. These are lies. They are so mad that we're successful. And it's not a lot of people. It's like a little cabal, you know. But cancer starts like this big and then turns into, you know, so you got to kind of nip it in the bud. And whenever someone comes to me who I've been friends with for like several years and tells me I'm not coming to your conference because I was told that you said this, said that by more than one person. And I'm like, these people are lying. And I didn't ask for names. I can probably guess. And they've been in all these different groups and just saying the nastiest, meanest things they can say. And they're just so mad. They're just gnashing their teeth. There is a person who has another, she was a very nasty, mean person who said a lot of mean, nasty things about my friend. And I'm not going to get into that. But she had a conference. So they've tried to derail us, and we've had multiple people trying to say mean, nasty things, making up lies, making up rumors, and none of that is true. Nobody came into my house and said, you need to sit down and shut up. Because first of all, I wasn't talking. Second of all,
no one's gonna
the second time they're not going to tell me to do that. Second time, I'm the one that said to be quiet and shut up because people were doing that. So it's really frustrating when people say all this crap, you know, and I'm going like, dude, you know, that is not what happened. And they make up the most outrageous lies, and sometimes it makes you laugh.
Well, the biggest fools have the loudest mouths.
Yeah. I mean, I laugh about it. But then again, you know, like Anthony, like you said, there's times when you can laugh about it and times you really have to say something. And when it comes down to people with groups that have 10,000 people in them or 20,000 people in them or 30,000 people, and they're saying, hey, you know, these people are in our groups and they're saying blah, 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 and people are believing them.
That's when it becomes an issue.
Then it becomes an issue.
Yeah.
And so I had to step up. I didn't want to do this because I don't want people thinking there's all this drama. Because anytime I say anything on my show, they're like, oh, his show's full of drama. You know, that's not true. That is not true. And so I'm clearing the air here. I'm glad you brought that up, Anthony. I wasn't even going to say anything. I was just going to let it go, even though you and Nelly both said clear the air. I'm clearing the air, though. That's not true. These things they're saying about me, it's lies. Reddit's not the only one that they're doing it. They say that I treat you guys bad, which is all jokey comedy stuff.
Some people say I am a bad man.
That I do things that are not correct to do. I don't mistreat Anthony and Tony. If they probably mistreat me as much
Anthony
as
mistreats us with the pool noodle.
that's probably
as you all know.
That is the worst.
What you call mistreatment, I call holding you to a higher standard.
Okay, well, we call it being ugly and mean.
Well, then maybe y'all should stop being weak. I don't know what to tell you.
Oh my gosh! See, folks?
Higher standard, he says, while
be
he
strong like
stands
me.
above us, beating us with a pool noodle.
You should be grateful that it's a pool noodle. See, this is what I'm talking about. No appreciation.
we don't we joke and laugh a lot, and people ask me, if we're like this outside of the show, and I'm like, yes,
Yeah. This is pretty much what
this is who we are.
we all talk crap to each other at all times.
Yeah, and we'll be at a store. I'll tell you a really quick one, and then we'll get the guests on here. I promise. I was at the store and I said, "Dude, I'm so tired of this pig," because the pig was like making a mess, and I said, "I'm so tired of this pig like eating everything in sight." Because if it'll aggravate, he'll aggravate you because he's hungry. He wants food. He's a little piggy and he wants food. And the cashier, she's like, "Geez, you shouldn't talk about your children that way." And I'm like, I don't know why she assumed that it was a child. And I'm like, what? And my wife's like, no, is a pig. And she's like, well, yeah, I understand that, but it's still a human being. And Anthony was like, no, it's literally a pig. And she's like, what?
Yeah.
And Anthony goes, it's a pig about this big. His name is Truffles, and he's cool, but he does eat up everything in sight, and he'll push you to try to get food. And he's just hungry, and because he's a pig. And so she was like, oh, so, she didn't understand. But, we are the way we are all the time. This is not a facade. We're not putting on a show. We are putting on a show, but we're not pretending to be people we're not. And I don't mistreat people, and they don't mistreat me. It's all joking and laughing. And these people, I guess they really, really want to believe that I'm a bad, evil guy. And so,
Well, here's the thing that they don't understand is like anything you say to us can't hurt us because Wolf says stuff to me and Anthony that hits us like right in our like things that we really are insecure about. So like he knows how to hurt us and make us be like, oof. So then we do that to each other.
You do it to me too.
Everybody hits each other like that. So like that's why when we read your comments, it doesn't really affect us because it's nothing worse than we say to each other.
Well, yeah, and I mean, like you need that too. Like,
Yeah.
Like you need someone to tell you what's what.
That's what makes us all funny
Yeah.
too, I think.
Otherwise, you're gonna stagnate as a person.
Yeah.
Well, and it's important that you say what's going on because if you don't, like I said, things can get misconstrued, then it turns into a cancer. But let's call the guests. Let's get this going here, folks. We can do all the yapping on Sunday. You typing in? You want me to? Okay. Yeah. We're late getting the guest on here. Yeah, I got it. Man. It's not ringing?
Hello, Josh Turner.
No, I could barely hear her.
Oh,
The first one is your phone.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
I can, yeah.
Even with that, it's not going up, dude. Hold on 1 second. We'll get you going here because I can't hear you. The audience may. I don't know.
I can't hear on the headphones.
Okay. We got new mics and a new system, so click over to that side for a minute.
Okay.
Okay.
Can you test real quick and say something for us?
Test real quick and say something for us.
There you go.
Did it work?
Yes, it
Perfect.
worked. I'm just trying to blow my nose here. I'm battling through a summer cold, or I don't know what this is.
Y'all gotta upgrade that toilet paper. You cannot be rolling with one ply. Always do.
Well, this is we grabbed this from the store just so we could blow our nose because they didn't have tissues. Because, us guys, we don't come prepared. Like, late, if Nellie was with us, she would have everything. Right
Seven
there.
different types,
Yes,
like
she would
quilted.
Yeah. Are you hungry? Here's a cake. I'm like, where is that? Purse this big should pull a cake out, dude. And, whatever. And plates and plastic forks. But yeah, so Missy, tell everybody who you are.
Okay. I'm Missy. So I saw one of those pale humanoid creatures in the middle of the road one night, and for a while I tried to kind of shove it down because I didn't I didn't want to be seen as one of those crazy people, right? But I couldn't let it go, and I'm a little bit extra. So I started researching it, and here I am like 5 years later, 4 or 5 years, getting ready to produce a documentary and all that. Um yeah, so I thought I was crazy at first, but it turns out lots of people have seen this thing. If you're emotionally stable enough to go on Reddit, like there's a there's a subreddit called crawler sightings, and honestly, like
Mhm.
Reddit is toxic, but this subreddit is not that way. Um, all those people are pretty respectful, so I a guy on there has done this map where he's like plotted out all these crawler sightings and or rake. I mean people use the name interchangeably. Some people get mad if you say rake. You know the deal. They're like, oh, that's fictional. And while it is, you also know that it's based on something that's very real.
Mhm.
So that's kind of my history. I guess the biggest thing I've done is that trail cam image of the creature that everyone refers to as the rake. It was like widely believed that that had been debunked, and every encounter, well, not every encounter, but a lot of encounters I would read, they'd say, well, you know what I saw looked just like that creature, but that's been debunked. And it looked just like the creature I saw too. And I just wondered, like, how how is that possible? And who debunked it? Like, what does that even mean? Who's qualified to do that? So I found the guy who is credited with debunking the photo, and I read through his reasoning, and it was flawed. And he was, I don't believe he was correct in his assessment. So that's it. That's about it, I think.
Well, everybody is able to debunk and discredit anything at any time. Don't you know that? That's how the rules work. If
Well,
somebody puts a
r-
picture on there, there's 1,000 people that are going to jump on there and say it's not real, it's fake. There could be a picture of
or
you just brushing your teeth, and they're like, it's fake.
right, right, yeah. It that always cracks me up because, like, I don't. Okay, I'm not gonna say like I'm perfect. I judge people sometimes, and when I see all these comments, like immediately someone just says, "Oh, that's fake. It's photoshopped." It's like I understand the unknown is really uncomfortable, but it's ridiculous to pretend you're certain about everything. I think they look ridiculous saying things like that because you don't know. I mean, I can't. I've spent a long time looking into that picture. I even spent months in a photo forensics class so I could like go hardcore and really look into it, and I still couldn't tell you with certainty that the picture is 100% authentic. There's always a chance. So, you just wait, you get more information. If something contradicts what you believe, then you adjust your view. I agree, yeah.
So, what did it look like? Tell me, set the stage. Tell us what happened. Tell us what's going on.
Okay, so I've only told this story a couple times. All right. So I was on my way home from my mom's house, and it's she's in Alabama and I'm in Mississippi. We're each about 10 miles from the state line. And I was coming around a curb and I looked ahead and I saw something in the road, and in my head, I thought, oh, there's a deer in the road. So I started to slow down. And as I'm getting closer, it's not moving. And I, it's starting to register that this is not a deer. This is not anything I've ever seen before. By the time I was on it, I was at a complete stop, and it still was not moving. And I wet my pants. Just and I didn't think I would be someone who ever got scared, just like crap themselves or peed. I mean, I guess it could have been worse. I did just pee, but I it was like, when somebody calls you and they're like, "Are you sitting down?" and you're about to get horrible news, or like when you're kicked in the gut and you lose your air, like it
Uh-huh.
takes the wind out of you. It was like the psychological equivalent of that. I was terrified, but I couldn't move. I was in my vehicle and this thing was in front of me and it was just staring at me and I was staring at it. Its mouth was really weird. It was like gaping open. I didn't see any teeth. It didn't have a visible nose or ears. It was just this it was bald and pale and horrifying. So at some point, I mean, I don't know how long I sat there. It was almost like time stood still. At some point, it got up on its back legs from being on all fours, and it kind of launched itself off into a field to the left of me. and it let out this screech. Oh man, it was horrifying. It sounded like a combination between like a mountain lion and a woman being murdered. So I drove up the road and pulled over, and I could. This is crazy, Josh, but I could not remember how to use my phone. Like it wasn't like I had forgotten and I used to know how to use it. It was like I had never seen a phone. It took me
Yeah.
a while to like gather myself, and I guess that's trauma, you know. But I drove home, and I think I was real wrecked over this for a good, I mean, months, because it's like you think you know the world, you think you know. I was pretty, I mean, I felt like I had a good grip on reality, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, what is reality? Because if I thought that was reality, and now I know this thing exists, what else could exist? And your whole worldview kind of implodes, and you have to you go about like rebuilding that, and completely changing the way that you look at everything. So
And so after this encounter, you tried to write about it, right? There's something. What happened?
were you talking about the book?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh goodness, yeah. Okay, so I wrote a book, and was going to publish it with a publisher, and we decided, I would just do it on my own. And then I tried to publish it to Amazon, and when I did, I got this I got this kickback message saying that I'd plagiarized, and I was like, what on earth? And it turned out that someone had taken, because I'd uploaded a video to YouTube about all this, about the investigation of the trail cam photo. Someone had taken my video transcript and published an article to Amazon, and it was basically like word for word what was in my video transcript. And so Amazon was like, you've plagiarized this article, but the article was plagiarizing my video. And I had so many roadblocks coming up with that. I was just like, okay, I'm not even going to do a book. I'll just, whatever. And I was just going to quit. I was so defeated. And then somehow, by some miracle, like one of my favorite creators on YouTube, we got in touch and have worked together on some things. And so he's going to come to Mississippi, and we are going to finish shooting this documentary, and everything has fallen into place so smoothly. It's like I've needed something and it's been there. And so that just, when something is constantly going wrong, I think it's maybe like a good hint that that's not necessarily what you're supposed to be doing. But with the filming and everything, it's just like, I mean, everything has been so easy. And so I feel good about it. I'm excited. Like really excited. So.
This creature you saw, and I get different descriptions of this thing, but I categorize them all as the crawler, pale crawler, whatever, the rake. Oh my gosh, I'm so I am sick, folks. I'm telling
Bless you.
you. Hold on one second.
So
You're fine.
you said the scream sounded like a cross between a woman screaming and a mountain lion.
Yeah, kind of. Like coyotes can sound like a female screaming. I know that there's really weird animal noises out there, but
Have you
this
ev-
wasn't. It
Oh.
was like mechanical almost.
Mechanic? That's what? Okay, that you threw me for a loop there. It sounded
Okay,
mechanical too.
Okay, like it
That's just
sounded
crazy.
almost like. Okay, so you know how there's biological and then there's machine, and
Okay.
it almost sounded like a recording. And see, I've never mentioned this because I don't know how to explain it or describe that, but yeah, like there was like an old analog. Do you know what I mean by that? Like an old analog sound to it.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
like a kind of like a record player or like a cassette tape, but like a is
Yeah,
that
like yes, like an old recording before it's been mastered. But
okay?
I wish I could think of a
Have
better
you
way to describe that, but I can't.
have you ever heard a Fisher cat scream?
I don't know what that is. A
Okay.
what?
I'm gonna see if I can. I'm gonna see if I can find a Fisher cat. A Fisher cat. Now, I want to clarify this. I'm not saying that what you saw is a Fisher cat because it looks nothing like what you described.
He's trying to find the sound.
Yeah. A Fisher cat. It's like a little weasel, but when it screams, it sounds like a woman. It's just like a blood curdling scream. Hang on. Let me see if I can find one.
Okay. Oh my goodness. Someone just said, okay, I just pulled up. Someone said no tonal variances. Okay, here we go. it wasn't like there were no variances, but it was like there was something very off about the variances. It didn't come from anything natural.
Go ahead and play it.
Okay.
Hold on one
Hang
second.
on. Let me see.
Missy.
I want to see if
Sure.
this is the right video. Hang on 1 second. Come on now.
It's not going to give us a copyright strike, is it? Is that going to give us a copyright strike? Because if it is, I don't
No.
want to play it.
What is this thing called? A what?
Hang on. Okay.
Mm. Mm-mm.
I don't know if you can hear that well through the mic.
Did it sound anything like that?
Oh, I hear it. No, not really. I'm trying to. I can't. There was a movie I watched a long time ago, and it was like, oh, if I could remember the name of it. And there was this creature in it, and these people had. Okay, so a hole opened up near a national park, and these people went in to go after the people who had gone in before them and didn't come back. And this creature was murdering these women, and it was like the sound it made. It was of the last person it had murdered. It was their voice, but it was
Here we don't
something-
say murder because we say unalived.
Okay. I apologize.
Because some it's getting to where you're not supposed to say things that will trigger people. I'm not joking.
Okay.
So we're trying to get away from saying that word because it's not me because I'm a Gen Xer. It's not hurting my feelings the way people talk now. It's
Right.
like, so it was killing people, basically what you're saying.
Yes, it was, and so it was unaliving them. They were evacuating their avatars. Is that
They were leaving this mortal coil.
Yes,
They
their
were.
carbon-based life forms were being
Their exit
giving
came
up
up.
the ghost?
uh,
Yeah. If I could find that, I could play it for you. But it just sounded like something that was, I don't know how to say it, but mechanical, like not organic at all, like something that was like robotic almost. I can't really think of any other way to describe it.
are you playing something here? I'm waiting.
No.
Okay. I was sitting here going like, all right. So, I don't understand. Like, when you, like you said, you heard like a shriek or whatever, and you heard it sounded robotic. Now, that's why I was wondering, like, because that's something that I've had people tell us that it was like alien, sort of like we had an alien encounter, or somebody that had an alien encounter out of New Mexico. And they saw what they thought was a crawler, pale, whatever. And it ran out in front of their vehicle. I haven't told this story on the show before because I just got it not too long ago. And it was a rake-looking creature, but then they had missing time, which I've also heard, like there was a show that one of my colleagues, Josh Nanokio, had on his show a couple years ago. And I give credit to him for this one, but it was some guys that went out camping and they had missing time connected to a Dogman encounter, which is weird. I mean, like people don't think of it like you can get missing time from any of these creatures, but this person.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, I don't have any memory of like, so I guess I don't know about the time that passed, but I have no memory of driving off from where I was when I saw it to where I pulled over to try. I was going to call my mama because I was, I was scared, but I have no memory of that. Someone suggested one time that it sounded like abduction. And it's interesting you mentioned, did you say Santa Fe, New Mexico?
No, I didn't say that, but it was sort of out in that area. It was outside of Santa Fe. Yeah.
Okay.
How did you know that? You just guessed that or what?
I don't, did you say it?
No.
I mean,
No,
I
I
want to
didn't.
say I'm just really psychic, but I thought I don't know.
I mean, are
I
you
don't know.
psychic or are you just...
Sometimes, yeah, sometimes.
Uh.
But I never know when I am. I'll say something and I'll freak people out, and they think I know more than I do, but I don't. It's just like it happens a lot. It's a problem. I wish I did. I wish I did know, but I mean, I'll have like weird dreams and premonitions. I have the sleep paralysis stuff. I'll do the astral projection, not like intentionally, but I'll just like wake up and there I am looking at my body. But no, someone had sent me a really wild encounter from and it happened in Santa Fe, New Mexico during like a time when cattle mutilations were going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's my favorite story I've ever gotten because it was wild. Like, and it has the mimicry, like the voice mimicry, and how it sounds kind of mechanical.
One of the things
Yeah.
I'm going to start doing on my show, and I've talked to the guys here about it, and I think that it would really work. And you guys are my base here and listening here on the show to the live streams. We're going to start doing like these 20 to 30-minute episodes where people just did have like one encounter. A lot of times we'll do like an hour and I'll tell people's encounters, but if people want to tell their encounter, I'm willing to give them, as long as they can talk clearly and I'm willing to let them tell their stories. But I wanted to do these like people who have like one or two encounter. That's it. That's all they had.
Yeah.
Just to
That's a
have
good
them
idea.
tell their story, to have like 20, 30-minute shows and just drop those. We were going to do that for Patreon, and then we vetoed it. And I'll tell you why. My wife brought up the point that a lot of our listeners can't afford to pay for extra content. And so I don't want my content for people to have to pay to listen to my content.
Yeah, I get that. I do. I wish there was a way to like just collect all these encounters where we could really like start to look at the data science, run it through some programs where we could find or the computer can find correlations between things. But I just don't know how. I mean, as of right now, I haven't figured out
It's not
exactly how to do that.
I'm doing it already.
Oh, are you?
Yeah, it sounds like I'm just like, yeah, I'm doing it already because I'm magic. No, no, I'm doing it already because what I do is when I get stories, I'm kind of OCD, which I've said before on the show, and I put them in files, and then later on, these two knuckleheads or my wife or whoever's involved, in our team we have 3 other people who help. They'll be like, no, there's another story that came through. And we'll go through and we'll recategorize it because a lot of times I guess, Tony, you probably done a lot of research on the one-offs.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll get a one-off and then me and Tony
It's fun because it's like a puzzle thing where it's like you're going through all these one-offs and then you slowly start seeing a connection, so you start putting those together, but then as you do that you start finding out that it kind of fits bigger into this bigger piece. So then like the whole picture slowly starts getting bigger and bigger, and then you realize like little one-offs start becoming certain aspects of certain cryptids, where it's just like what they expect is a one-off, or like this one little quick thing happen is actually something that a lot of this certain cryptid will do quite a bit. It's just that if you see just that, it'll freak you out. So I mean, that's what's really fun about it. But yeah, I mean, we kind of do something similar like that, to where we kind of put together all these things that kind of have similarities. Then Wolf will take, Wolf has the final say about how they get categorized, because he's the one that was a little bit more OCD and has have the file system correctly. But
plus I'm abusive and I'm also very
And he makes
controlling.
Us, and he makes us work for free and takes our food. That's why we're skinny.
That's why they're skinny and I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm like starving.
Yeah. Together we make the number 101.
What is it with the French fries? Like, can I have some? You start shoveling them in your mouth. Oh, were you hungry? Sorry, I'm kind of. No, that's not what happens. But people's images on Reddit, I guess, is that I'm this ogre.
Yeah.
And then I talk so much that I have to be told to sit down and shut up at my own conference.
Well, I mean, there's a difference in talking just to speak and then talking because you actually have something to say.
Yeah.
The thing about what you were talking about, the picture coming together, I think the biggest lie people are told is that it's a rabbit hole. That this is not a rabbit hole. It is a spiral. You keep coming back around to things that you thought you understood, and then there's even more you find out, pulling on threads here and there. And I think you could I almost did, like, just got lost in it. Fortunately,
you will. You will.
If you're not careful, yeah, you will definitely. So I want to. Well, then I need to send you the stories that I have, and then, well, I was going to talk to you about this anyway. Like, I'll talk to you when we're not on. Are people
Yeah.
listening to us? They
Yeah,
are.
we're
Yeah,
live.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we're live. You didn't know that?
I do now.
Oh my gosh.
Oh,
I didn't
jeez.
know you were on the show. I thought you knew that we were doing a show tonight.
No, I did. I just thought it was pre-recorded. I don't know why I thought that though, because I was watching it. Oh my goodness.
Oh, well, you've been talking all this time, and you should see the horrible comments. Oh my gosh.
Oh, man.
They're
Yeah,
like, this lady's
Yeah, they're
crazy.
saying that you're
She's out of your
terrible.
mind. Like,
Oh,
like,
I know. Like, I used to be one of those people before this happened who would just say, I don't care what other people think about me, when really, like, I cared a whole lot. And now, like, I'll acknowledge, of course I care, but I don't really give a,
yeah, we get it.
Rats,
You don't give a
yeah.
good afternoon because you can't. At the end of the day,
Right.
it's like,
They really don't have a say in your life. I mean,
no, I'll tell people, like, my lived experience is not dependent on your belief in it.
yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
That's a good one. Like the thing with the Reddit, I just laughed it off. But then, when you start getting contacted by the heads of these large groups where a lot of information is passed back and forth, and people are like, oh, yeah, we heard you didn't want us at your conference and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, what? That is when you have to draw the line and say, okay, enough with the lying trolls. You have to put them in their place. And I've been reluctant to say anything about them on the show because I don't want this reputation of having all this drama around me. And it's like I've said before, it's not a whole bunch of people. It's just a small little, like if you took everybody together, I would say it's probably 20, 25 people at the most, but they can do an incredible amount of damage if they don't have anything else going in their life. And all they
talk
do
to
is
the right people and
Yeah.
spread the right lies, and it just
Mhm.
causes a lot of havoc. I mean,
then they and there are people. Let me tell you something, Missy. And Missy's her name. I'm not calling her little Missy. No, I'm not talking down to this person. I'm saying Missy. Let me tell you something. And my wife can verify this, and Anthony, Tony can verify it. Everybody that's involved with the show. There are people who email us regularly. And they're just like, I'm still here, and it's just them holding a rifle, It's like they're not going anywhere. And they have literally this one lady in England, like she told me 3 years ago she was going to make it her mission to destroy me and to destroy my life and to do everything she could. And she said something about the roof was going to fall on top of all this other crap, and I'm like, geez, Louise. And every so often, she'll pop back up and just be like, I'm still here hating you. And I'm like, good God, dude. Like, I'm a very galvanizing person. Like, obviously, there are some people who love me and some people who hate me and then some people are indifferent. But it's usually, the ones that hate me, like, they really hate me. Like, I have had the most, like, if I were to post some of the hate that I get, you would be like, you're in danger. Like you would think I was in danger from these crazy people. Luckily, they're like in Australia. One of them's over there in England. The other one's like in what's the other one? The dude from not Argentina, Chile.
Mm.
Down there saying all these crazy things. Thank God they're in other countries. But then you have the cabal here that's doing it too. And then we get some of these weird ones that'll just pop up and literally. I've had people tell me that they've looked into these people and they're, maybe they're being paid or something. I don't know. I've had people tell me that, and I'm just like, maybe that's what they're doing. And
that's possible. Very possible.
It tends to happen whenever I talk about something that hits home, and a lot of people are kind of like gaining momentum with they're like, oh, I get it. Yeah. Somebody will come in and they'll stir up dissension. And
listen to this. Okay, so when I put that video out about that child cam image, I had a guy contact me, and he like encrypted his email. It was like, and I didn't even know you could do that on Gmail, but you can. And he was saying something about after that picture surfaced, the Army Corps of Engineers completely flooded that entire area, and the implication, from my understanding, was that they did that to kill that creature off. And he warned me. He was like, I want you to keep this in mind. There will be people who try to destroy you. It doesn't matter if you've done it or not. They will try to take you down. It happens all the time. And when that happens, you do know you're getting closer to the truth. And I felt scared for like 10 minutes and then I just kept on going. But I think when somebody's that nasty to you, Josh, it's like it just says if they can do that, they have all that hate in them. It doesn't say, that's nothing it says about you. It's
It's
just like,
destroying them. I mean,
yeah. What do they say about drinking poison or something about
Oh, that carrying,
I,
the
drinking
carrying,
poison, expecting
carrying a
another person to
grudge.
die?
Yeah, carrying a
That's
grudge.
what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, and that's actually like I have this Saint Benedict pin. Oops, I just dropped it. They're gonna be like, oh, look at this bozo, he's dropping stuff. It's the Saint Benedict, and it basically you're rebuking Satan and telling him to drink his own poison.
Mm.
So work is calling. You want to step out for a minute? Can't get away from it for 5 minutes. I hate my life sometimes. But you know what, though? I'm going to say this. I don't hate my life. I shouldn't say that. That sounds very like childish and Gen Z.
I didn't believe you. I didn't believe you did.
There's people that will literally talk like they hate their life and their kids. The young people. And there were some kids the other day at the mall. Oh, excuse me. Oh my gosh, I'm. Oh God.
Bless you.
Thank you. But I was at the mall and I was there, and there were some kids at the counter where my friend has a shop, and they were talking about. And this one kid was looking at his phone. He goes, "I hate my life," and I'm like, "You hate your life?" And I told him, I said, you always hear about, oh, there's hungry kids in other countries in Africa and whatever, but I've actually been there. And you would not believe some of the places I've been where these kids, if you give them some chewing gum, it makes their week because they don't have anything like we have. They couldn't even fathom having a cell phone and having the problems that we have in this country.
Oh, I know it.
Yeah.
I've said this so many times. I've been through some hard times, but the times in my life where I was the poorest I've ever been, I was also the happiest. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, Miriam Nunn says, I've been in Africa and the kids are happy. I was telling my
Yeah.
wife this last night. They'll be walking like 2 kilometers to a water hole to get water with jugs on their heads, carrying them, and they're running back and they're chanting and cheering and happy. They'll have
Yeah.
one soccer ball for an entire village and they're happy.
Oh, I remember going to this really poor village at the base of a mountain in Monterey.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I know what you're talking
because
about.
that's where my stepdad's family was from, and we went to go visit. And those were the happiest kids and the happiest families I'd ever seen. And they were literally dirt poor. They were living in these cinder block shacks with like dirt floors, and they were living like whole families to like a house like no bigger than this room that we're in. It's just, but they didn't complain about anything, and like I spent all day playing with these kids. We didn't understand a word that each other said, but we just knew that we were happy and we were playing together. And I don't know, it just I'll always remember that because it really put things into perspective. Like these people have nothing, but at the same time they have everything.
I'll tell you this, when I was 15, I had to live with my friend's family. And they were a very poor Mexican family. And this is the family that I saw the Dogman with. And I slept on the floor. And I had 2 pairs of pants and a pair of shorts and 3 shirts. And me and my friend, we shared clothes because we were poor. We were very poor. They were dirt poor. And they took me in with very meager means. And they took me in. His family took in multiple people, multiple kids over the years and let them stay there. And I never forgot that. His mother was like my second mom. When she died, a part of me died with her. And then when my mother died, it was like, I just say, thank God I have Nellie. Because,
Right.
with my grandmother gone and my Tia Hova gone, it's like I felt lost, and his mother was, she cried. She came to visit me when I was as a kid. I got locked up as a kid, and she came to visit me. And you cherish those moments that you had with somebody who cared about you that deeply. she never gave up on us. She kept pushing us to get our lives right with God. And every time I saw her, are you in church? Are you doing this? Are you doing that? She cared, and they were
Yeah.
dirt poor people. And I
Right.
tried to, every time I went back to visit, I would try to help or do something. I did what I could. And she didn't want to take money. I had to like give it to her husband and tell him to make sure that because she wouldn't accept it.
Yeah.
But she's just like always talking. You remember Martha?
Yeah.
Always talking about my rewards in heaven. I'm not worried about it here. And my mother, after she had her near-death experience, same thing. She was the same way. She was just like committed to her Lord and Savior. And that's where true happiness comes from. It doesn't come from owning a bunch of stuff. It doesn't come from all this other ridiculousness, and keeping up with the Joneses. And I said this on my show last weekend. We as Gen Xers, dude, our biggest sin is envy and jealousy. The boomers have a greedy thing going on. They really do. They're kind of greedy and they're kind of selfish, but the slacker, the most, just slothful, lazy, that to me is the millennials, and the most entitled.
I never thought. I never thought about it that way. But yeah, the generation before yours, baby boomers, their sin is greed, and then y'all's is envy, and ours is sloth. It's like so this next generation, I wonder what theirs is gonna be.
Have you not noticed?
What?
I mean, they're absolutely insane.
Yeah, they're mentally ill.
They don't know what to call people. I mean, they have been. It's not their fault. It's indoctrination. And they have no attention span. When I pride, yeah, I gave them a card, about my show, and this one kid, I think he was like, I don't know, 18 or something maybe. Is that Gen Zer? That's a Gen Zer, right?
Yeah, if you're 18, you're Gen Z.
And he was like looking at his phone. He's like, "Oh, you don't have like any like 10-minute videos or like anything shorter?" And I'm like, "No, dude, because the people that watch my show is not your generation."
Yes.
So-
Oh man, the shorts, the YouTube shorts, I'll get sucked into them sometimes. But then I feel like my brain is mush. I'm a millennial. I think I'm a millennial, but like an elder millennial.
Well, what
Like
is your birthday? I mean,
80?
the year.
I was born January 6, 1984.
Okay, yeah,
So-
you are an older millennial,
Yeah.
but yeah, you're
Like right on the cusp.
You're right on the cusp, so you could kind of go either way. But it really is though. My generation was all about. It was all about going to school in my generation was horrible because if you didn't have the new Nikes, or you didn't have the Guess jeans, or we had these things called Jerbodes. Never had a pair of them. Everybody was like Jerbodes, and I never had that. Or the Cavarici pants. I never had those. I never had anything nice like that when I was young. Until I started working. I became a bodyguard for a guy when I was 16 years old. I literally bodyguarded this little guy whose family they were mafia. His family was. I wasn't. So his family was. And they paid me and gave me a car to drive him to school. He was like a year younger than me, but I was like a tough kid, or whatever. And so when I came to Austin, they were our neighbors, and I would drive him to school back and forth, and they gave me a car. My mom was like, "Where are you getting this money to buy like cologne and hats, and you're going to the mall? You don't work. You don't have a job." And I said, "Yes, I do." And so I got a job washing dishes, but it was just like a cover for that other job. And then it was like, yeah. And so and then my mom figured it out. She's, and my mom forbid me to box, forbid me to train or do any, she didn't want me wrestling. She thought I was already too violent, which I probably was. And she said, I don't want you doing any of that stuff. It's 11-11, folks. So
I think she probably just thought, this face is my moneymaker. He cannot hurt his face, because then what we do.
Yeah. And so she was one of those moms. She wasn't over doting or controlling. She was a workaholic always. She was always gone. But then when she was around, and Anthony, you can attest to this, she wanted to lay down the law, and it was like, no, you haven't done anything. And so I did not respect her or my dad because they did nothing for me. They were typical people from their generation, and they were workaholics, and they were very self-centered, kind of greedy.
That's my story. That's my story. I basically through like upper elementary to junior high, I lived with my best friend because my mom was always gone for work, and then she had some substance abuse issues. I remember like I got left at school one day and had to spend the night with my teacher. And so the next
Oh,
day I had on the same I'm fine now, I'm not, I mean it's fine, but I had on the same thing I'd worn the day before, and I just got ripped for it, and that like traumatized me. It was the most horrible experience of my life.
do you
Oh,
believe in ghosts? Let me ask you a question. This is kind of, but do you believe in ghosts? Larry, thank you for that donation. Such a
I
great guy.
I've seen ghosts. I'm so sorry. My child is in front of me asking me a question. It's a red push broom. Okay. Okay, Connor. I'm so sorry. So yeah, when I was a kid, I saw ghosts a lot. I don't believe in ghosts as like being people. I don't think that they are like I don't think it's like the person who's passed away. I think there are a few different types I've seen. And when I was a kid, I gave them these names, but keep in mind I was like a kid. So there were over and overs, and over and overs are just like they're in some place and they repeat something over and over again. They're not necessarily conscious of you. And then there were the orb things, and I just called them the light ball people.
The
And
light
then there
bulb
were the ones
people?
that well, like the light ball people,
Well, the light
because they
ball
were
people.
yeah, because they were like balls of light. There was this one that would come in my room and like I could communicate with it. I mean, I know this sounds crazy, but
No, no,
it was
no. It
like,
doesn't sound. I know what you're saying, and the reason I asked that because we didn't have a very long conversation. It was a very long. It was a hard week for me. I had a lot going on. But you did mention. I thought you mentioned something about ghosts. And so I thought we would talk about that.
yeah. So, my first memory is of like something paranormal, and I was with my parents. We were coming out of some room, and I saw this figure. It was a dark figure, and I don't know that it was a shadow person because it wasn't like I saw it out of the corner of my eye. I was looking at it head on, and it was like kind of leaned over, and it was sitting on a rock, and it brought the rock with it. It was not a rock from in my house, and I will never forget that. It was like I wasn't scared of it. I didn't feel danger, but it looked just like the thinker statue. And at some point after that, like there was this, I woke up one night and there was this lady standing in front of my bed, and she's like glowing, and beautiful looking. And she terrified me. I think a lot of times people think that if something is dark in color, it's evil. And if something is glowing, then it's of God. And I don't think that's necessarily true. But, I kind of, when I started school, I realized not everyone has those experiences, and you don't win any popularity contest talking about that kind of stuff. So I
No.
kind of, I shoved it down, and now I just have this like I can, I can feel a room change. It's still there, like but I don't see things quite as much, but I can hear things, and like like if there's I don't want to say negative energy, but if there's like trauma in an area, it kind of stains the area. Like
Blood and
and I don't
emotions
know.
saturate the environment. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a stain. Yeah, but I get like for a ghost, in my opinion, you cannot like a ghost is not physical, and you can't enact change in the physical world without a body. You have to have some
Mhm.
sort of body. And so I've seen things like take on the form of like I guess it's called, what are they, ectoplasm. I've seen kind of like these mist things manifest and knock things down. But I mean, yeah, I believe in ghosts. I was told when I was younger, because I was raised Southern Baptist, like that's evil. Psychicness is evil. Talking about demons is evil. But I don't know that I necessarily believe that, because it's like, how do you combat your enemy if you know nothing about it, right?
Yeah.
It's the art of war. So,
Well, some people
yeah,
believe that they believe that like they believe in God, but they don't believe in demons.
how can one exist without the other? How do
Yeah.
you know happy without being sad? It's like we live we live in a dualistic world. That's how it works. One gives rise to the other.
You can't cherry pick what you want to believe.
Yeah. One
No,
of the
you,
things I
you
was going to tell you, and the reason I bring up the thing about ghosts too, is because because a lot of people who see a Dogman or a Bigfoot, and y'all know this here at the round table, we've come to the conclusion that I would say probably 80% of these people have had other encounters.
something else I've noticed, like a background in radio is common with people who have encountered stuff like this. My parents ran radio stations when I was growing up. I noticed that a lot. But yeah, they've usually had it's like I don't know, I guess something like that happens when you're younger, and it's like before you shut down to it, right? It opens you up, and so your mind is like, well, this is possible. So then that may be why you see. I think that there have been plenty of people who have seen the same creature I saw, and these are going to be the people who get just insanely angry at you for talking about it for no reason, just blow up. And I think that they're reacting to something, not the person who's telling their story, but maybe something they saw in their mind just, convinced them it was something else.
But some people want to believe too that and if, like I said, they'll defend their paradigm. They will do mental gymnastics to defend their paradigm to the end.
Yeah, what you were saying about memory earlier, that is so true. Like the years go on, memory is so ambiguous, right? But it's interesting. There's this doctor at the University of Virginia, and he does studies into reincarnation. These kids who remember their past lives,
Oh yeah.
and then they did a study on near-death experiences, and they interviewed these people about their experiences right after they happened, and they followed them over the course of, I think it was like 15 to 20 years. And they would ask them to repeat the story, because they would say, this what happened was more real to me than anything real I've ever experienced. And their stories did not change. And I can attest to that. When something like not of this world is happening, when it's something paranormal, or you go into this weird state, and it's very real. You remember so much more than you would if you were just interacting in your everyday life. So I understand the nature of memory and it being ambiguous, but I tend to think when people are talking about an encounter they've had, that their memory is pretty accurate.
One of the things I think too, I think that when people when they recall something, I think that there's a tendency for people to try to add to it to make it sound more spicy. And I always tell
Yes.
people when I start talking to them, and I may have told you this too, but just don't spice it up. Just
Don't fluff it up. Yeah.
yeah, just tell
Right.
it like it is, like it happened. And then some people downplay, and when it seems to be whenever somebody does that to me, it's like they're doing it for themselves. They're not really doing it for me. They're
Yes.
downplaying it to themselves because they don't want to believe that they saw something like an 8-foot tall werewolf or a 9-foot tall Bigfoot or an alien from a craft. They don't want to see, they don't want to know, or they don't want to believe they saw a demon or a ghost in their room. And they'll say, well, there was this one thing I saw, but it was nothing. And then when you start talking to them about it, you're like, that's nothing to you? Because that's a lot of something to me.
Yeah.
And they want to church it up, or they want to downplay it, or they want to do this or that. And I just tell people, just give it straight. Let's just drink it straight, because there is no, because later on, then when you have to go back and the story changes, then it kills the credibility.
Yeah, that's very true. See, when I saw that thing in the road, I couldn't remember if it was 2018 or 2019. Like when I started to finally talk about the story publicly, and because years had passed, and a lot had happened, and I never was tempted to say, oh, well, it was this year. And so people just went nuts over that. Oh, well, yeah, when she couldn't remember the year, I just didn't listen to anything else she said. She should have just picked a year. Well, if I'd done that, you would have gotten me, because it would have been like, oh, you just made up the year. So no, I don't remember exactly what year it was, but I know it was one of the two. So yeah, that people try to tell you too, like, oh, well, you just think you saw something, and maybe just because the way the light and the shadow hit, it was really something else. But like when you've seen something like this, what you saw. It's almost insulting to be told that, but yeah.
And that is a big problem when you still to this day, people can't come out and say what they. I was talking to some people the other day, and this person, they're from Norway, and it was a she, but I met her through her husband, and they had given me a story, and she was like, it's very hard for us to talk about this. And one of my guests years ago who came on the show, she had a Dogman encounter, but she's from Sweden. Same thing. It was like it was very hard for them to talk about it. Or like my friend from Germany. I mean, it's just not as accepted. And then when you go down into the people from South America, anywhere south of the border, it's not so much about like, oh, we think you're crazy for talking about it. It's like, don't talk about it because you bring it up.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about
Like
that.
you
I haven't.
conjure it up. That's what they believe.
Right. I think that what's the Wendigo? What native tribe is the Wendigo from? Is that like Algonquin?
Well,
Maybe. But
that's in dispute because there's a lot of tribes that have a very similar story to the
very true.
Wendigo.
Yes.
Now, I can tell you that the guy to talk about that's Chad Lewis. He's the Wendigo guy. He'll be at my
Okay.
conference. Are you going to the conference? Are you coming?
I'm not. My brother's sick. He's still in ICU, so
Oh yeah, that's right.
I
Perfect.
don't know. Yeah, thank you. I wanted to mention this. Ona Holly, I saw in your chat, her dad got real sick and she had to take him to the hospital and he's not doing well. So she said prayers. I don't know how many people saw that, but like my
Okay.
brother's real sick right now and I saw it. And so like it poked my heart and I just wanted to mention that. What were we talking about? I don't remember what we were saying.
We were just. I mean, you asked about the Wendigo, and I said that
Oh, right.
that Chad Lewis is the guy to talk about that. The Wendigo. He's going to do a presentation on it at my conference. And so,
Yeah.
Michelle, thank you for that donation. We appreciate it here. You the Wendigo though is talked about, and it is. I did a Wendigo show before. I've done one. If you go back and listen to the archives, there's one. It's one on there I did with a couple different people on the show, and we go down the spiral, rabbit hole, whatever, about what it is, and people seeing like there was these people, they were on the planes, and I don't remember the story right off the top of my head, like word for word, but I remember they were like somewhere like South Dakota or North Dakota, and they were hunting, and they saw this like frozen looking creature just walking toward them that looked like something out of Game of Thrones, like one of those, what are the ice zombies, what do they call
White Walkers.
White Walker thing. Yeah, and it was just very weird, and it was a story that I had gotten, and I'd gone over it with the people that I was doing the show with. It's very weird, man. Like I don't know. The idea though of being like up in the frozen north and being forced to commit cannibalism, that's kind of where that comes from, because it's probably something that a lot of people have faced. And I don't just mean like the Donner Party.
Right.
I mean, like, I went through there a few years ago, and I went to Donner Pass. We were going through there by going to Reno,
Right.
Lake Tahoe area. And
Yeah.
you think about what happened to those people. I mean, it's such a horrific thing that would breed those kind of stories, and they would come from the natives of having to survive maybe a really harsh winter. Like, who do we have to eat? You know what I mean? It would be a horrific thing, but there
Also,
would be like a spirit that would kind of take over to go ahead.
I was gonna say the emotions and also the desperation in that situation could breed all kinds of evil. I mean, who knows really what could get in tune with that kind of stuff that's going on. It would definitely, you know, breed something that could latch onto that. And if taking that final step, cannibalism, is what allows that thing to take over, then that could be a situation where it would make sense to me. But it's also one of those things where it's like you were speaking about the rake, and it's like, is that a similar creature? Is that something that people have misidentified as a Wendigo, and maybe that's like what they saw as that? And
It's really interesting to me that, okay, so when you're a kid and you see something and you have a memory of it, I think if it's nothing that you have in your database, like you just kind of build from memory what you're looking at, and you may not necessarily be looking at that, but from memory you just you have to pull something together so that
make a
you can give
sense,
it a
yeah.
name. Yes, make it make sense. But then these pale emaciated creatures, the descriptions are so consistent. And even going back to like the 1800s, one of my friends, Hammerson Peters, he found it completely by accident, but it's this Scots Canadian anthropologist called, his name's James Teat, and he was writing a memoirs of the North something expedition. I just butchered that, but he was talking about the belief of the interior Salish, and he talked about these beings of another kind that were occasionally seen, and he describes exactly what all these people who have these encounters with crawlers or rakes, whatever you want to call them, and that goes way back, right? And he's like, like people, like ghosts, it chases people, but it's more persistent.
Mm-hmm.
I always get these old books, like these these anthropology.
Missy. Oh, dang.
Hello?
I think we
That
lost.
people really started looking into, like
Oh, I think you
this woman
cut
called
out for a
Catherine
little
Spence.
bit.
This woman
I don't
called
think she
Catherine
can hear us.
Spencer. Oh, I can hear you.
Okay.
Oh
Okay.
yeah, it just cut out for you for a
Oh,
little
you just
bit.
kept talking. Oh, so you just rude. That's cool.
Oh, that's
Whatever.
all.
I
Well,
am
pretty
I
rude.
much-
hear you. I'm just talking over you.
Like the last 5 seconds we missed out.
Yeah, we didn't hear it.
I'm not sure what I was saying. I was just talking about like the pale-emaciated creatures. The descriptions are so consistent, and people don't have any sort of contextual bias. They've never, before their encounter, they usually haven't even heard of anything like that. Like when I had mine, I knew what Bigfoot was because everybody knows that. But I mean, almost everybody. I shouldn't say everybody, but I had never heard of like a dogman or a crawler or rake or anything. But a lot of these, I give a lot of weight to these Native American legends, and I don't know that they're necessarily myths because I was saying this. I get these books from like these thrift stores because I'm a giant nerd. And this woman, her name's Catherine Spencer, in the 1960s, I believe, she wrote a book called Navajo Chantway Myths, and she talks about this belief that the natives had that the supernaturals would carry you like so far up a mountainside that there was no possible way you could ever get back down. And when I read that, I was just like,
That
alarm bells
sounds
went
like
off.
the fairies of the
Missing.
Unseelie Court.
Yeah, and a lot of missing 411. They'll be like, these kids got to this elevation. There's no way they could have possibly gotten to. And so I don't know if it was like a language barrier or her own bias, but she called this a myth, and we know this happens. So yeah.
People like to cherry pick too with the Native American. I talked to several Native Americans that watch my show. There's a few of them that actually have their own podcasts, and I'm proud of the fact that they've told me that they feel like I'm closest to the truth, and they've told us that, Tony, right? And because people do like to throw them around like, well, the Native Americans say, and then they quote a bunch of crap that
they'll like cherry pick what they like about it. And it's a shame because it's like, it's one of those things where you're really missing out, you from different tribes who say different things, and having all those different viewpoints lets you really figure out like where the consensus of where like a mindset of, and maybe we could even figure out what type of creatures they were speaking about specifically more in detail if people would just stop choosing one thing and being like, this is what all Native Americans believe. And like,
right, acting like they're the spokesperson for a certain tribe.
Yeah,
I
and
know. I know.
it's like that's what that region, maybe like even of that region, maybe a specific tribe of those people believe that, but it's like, what's going on here?
Well, I've seen that though, like, and I don't want to ostracize anybody because I have a lot of friends that are apers too. But some of my aper friends, they like to cherry pick when it comes, and I tease them. We go back and forth, but they'll cherry pick certain things about the Native Americans and then totally ignore everything else. The biggest elephant in the room being that most of them, I would say, probably 75, 80%, or maybe even more, believe they're spiritual. They'll take the one tribe, the Wokawatami tribe that nobody's ever heard of, and say, that one tribe and that one guy there, he said one time years ago, I heard that he told some other guy, and that guy told that guy, and then this guy told his housekeeper's sister's cousin's sister's lizard, and then, then they heard it in a dream. And you're like, oh, okay, yeah,
lizard.
sure.
Yeah,
and they'll be like, yeah, and the housekeeper said that this is what the dream said, and then so that, I believe that. And you're like, wow, you'll believe all that mental gymnastics instead of just believing that maybe these things are metaphysical. Like, why is that so difficult? But there is a very large, and I'll say this, the Bigfoot community is very, there's a large aper community, and they are closed. They don't want to entertain or to accept anything out of, and what happens is they throw out tons and tons of encounters because it doesn't fit their paradigm. And it to me, that is so wrong. And I'll tell you this, it's in the ghost community too.
Yeah.
I'm telling you all the time, I've been in a lot of groups, and I said something about the spirits of the Nephilim, whatever, and this lady, she went plumb off of me. She's like, this is about ghosts, not demons from the Hebraic Bible and all this other stuff. And I'm like, it's not even in the Bible. It's in the book of Enoch and blah, 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 But
That's not how science works, though. You don't just get to pick what you
Right?
want and leave out the rest. Yeah,
I mean, that's
and I
just
think
common sense.
right when you can, it's really hard to apply scientific method to a lot of this stuff because while we have our anecdotes, but when you can, you should always try and follow a methodology, and you can't dismiss things because I mean there are a bunch of things I found in my research that I didn't like one bit, but what
Yeah.
kind of I mean I wouldn't be worth worth anything if I just like didn't include something because I didn't like it.
Well, I had an aper who recently, and he's not like an author or a podcast or anything like that, but he was an aper for a long time, and he lives up in upstate New York. He's a really smart guy. He was on my show, and he had an encounter that changed him. He was like, "Dude, I cannot be I can't. I just can't." And he's in my book. He'll be in my book anyway. I've interviewed him for that book, but you know, it's one of those things where you are the way you are until you're not. And I was at one time a flesh and blood believer in the Dogman phenomena, and it was like encounter after encounter after encounter slowly began to chip away.
Yeah.
And one day I was just sitting there on a chilly afternoon by the lake, and I was just like skipping rocks doing a security job, and it just hit me. It was a year before my wife came, and I'll never forget. I was like, it's just like I had an aha moment. I said, "Dude, what if they're both?" And then
Yeah.
I went down the road a couple years later, and I'm like, they seem to be more not flesh than flesh. And then I started to realize that Bigfoot's in the same category. But there are so many people who don't. And up until a couple years ago, I still thought Bigfoot predominantly was. But go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think, one of the biggest mistakes people make is we take our very human qualities and our minds, the way we see things and view things and our wants and desires, and we apply that to these creatures as if that's how they operate. And we have no idea,
Yeah, we were just speaking about this. What was it called?
Anthropomorphism.
Anthropomorphic.
Yeah.
They like to do that with
Mhm.
God too. They put it in a box. And I had a listener. I'm going to read something. And Missy, you can tell me what you think. Tony, Anthony, listeners at home here. This is a person who sent me a message. I'm not going to say her last name. First name is Connie. And Connie, I hope you don't mind me reading this, but it says, "Wolf, I have a question for you. On did the lives on Friday nights originally start because that was a time when the paratroopers could ask you questions that they have about the paranormal at large?"
Bless you.
Oh, sorry. Oh, dang, this is hard to sit here and do this. I got it. Okay. Oh, sorry, folks. I apologize. I am trying my best. But my wife pleaded with me not to do the show tonight, but I said, dude, the show must go on. I'm like, "Darn fool, woman. You don't know nothing. Get in the kitchen. Make that food. When I get home, you better have it done.
How dare thee speak back
Don't
to
talk
us?
back to me. My pig Ezekiel is hungry." I named him that because, he's Amish.
Isn't that your son? Your children?
That's
No,
my pig.
It's a joke. I heard it earlier.
His name is Truffles. I just like to mess around. But she said, "Do I remember that right? That's how it started?" And I said, "Yeah, of course it is. And if so, I have a question for you that you can answer tonight on the live if you receive this and read it in time. And that is, where and what is our Heavenly Father, the one true God who created us all? Where does he reside?" And then she goes on, kind of just asking the questions here. I'll jump around a little bit, She talks about as bright as the sun in the middle of our universe or some other universe, that you reside in the Holy of Holies in heaven, where certain angels can be in his presence in the throne room of God. I mean, we know that the one true God is the one that breathed life into each of us, and that first breath of life, the spark of God. And then she goes on, and then then she says, really, like in a perceiving him in a place like heaven sounds like too many boundaries, blah blah blah. Anyway, it goes on and on and on.
Well, I have an answer for that.
Well,
I mean, I would like.
she's
to hear what
asking me
yeah,
though,
yeah.
not you, because you're retarded. So, and that's
Whoa.
actually we
Hey,
can't
you
say that
he's
word.
mentally
You can't say
challenged.
that.
Mentally challenged.
Mentally challenged.
But
Hold on now, don't get
I
us.
still like that word because it applies to you. Okay, so it says, "From one author to another, I'm with you all the way." Stephen Rosar. Yeah. So, and I guess here's the thing. And when I say that word, I'm not talking about people who are. It's like calling somebody a name, whatever. here's what I say to that, and I'm not going to go into a long dissertation about it, but I believe that God is something that we can't fathom, and we need to stop putting human characteristics on God.
Mm.
You know, when Plato talked about God, he really only did it once that I can remember when I read. He talked about God as like this infinite, the universe, like he is all things, and he created everything and is the source. That to me is God. And then Paul talks about it. And I did mark this down because I was going to talk about it later on. I did mark it down, but I don't have it marked in my notebooks. My paperwork is at home. But Paul does talk about God, and when he was in Greece, and he answered, and I believe it was when he was in Corinth. And he gives an example of what he believes God is. And he's like, God is like, he's the creator and the source of all things. He basically says the same thing.
Yeah.
And I believe that Jesus was trying. Hold on one second. I believe
Yeah,
that
go ahead.
Jesus was trying to confirm that, to reaffirm that. But that people humans, they get so caught up in this they get caught up in religion, and they get caught up in ritualistic and what is, and they go up and down with whatever it is that they're taught from when they were young. And they think they got it all figured out. But most people that are Christians will tell you, they're like, I can't fathom. I don't really know. I don't understand God. And it's not for us to fathom or understand. But there has to be a source. Now, we know through many scientists, whether it was Max Planck or Michio Kaku, Einstein, I mean, they all said the same thing. Tesla, Kozyrev, they all said the same thing, that there has to be a beginning and there has to be an end. We don't know the end, but we do know there was a beginning. Something somewhere created that, but I believe it's a loop. I believe it's like infinity.
Yeah.
But there is a source to that. And I believe that Jesus had tapped into that source. When he returned to Jerusalem, he challenged the Pharisees' way of thinking and in their belief system. And they felt threatened, and that's why he was killed. But he knew the deal, and they were like, this guy is a heretic. He talks to God like he's his father. When the truth is, he's all of our father, and we can all do that. It is not,
Yeah.
he's there. And even Tesla claimed to have not convened with God, but he believed that he didn't really understand it, but he knew that there was this energy there where we all emanated from. And that was God.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I think, like in the beginning, there was just nothing, and then everything that was possible was just like in this nothingness. And then for a moment, like there was God contemplated on himself or herself, whatever. I don't think God has a gender. And then the intensity of God's vibration slowed down for a moment, and then it went on and on and on, and then you get into this physical form. But yeah,
I believe he had a gender because Jesus tells us he did. That's why he calls him the Father. He never calls him the Mother. There's no anything with Christ that says that. That's me. I personally don't believe that it's a female, and that's not to try to offend people or anything like that.
No, I don't think so either.
Yeah, I think that because Jesus, and that's where I base it on, because all religions talk of Christ, and that's why, whether people want to believe it or not, and it makes some people so mad. And then I had someone who posted something, and it says, I'm an atheist because why would God send himself to be sacrificed in the flesh to himself? Because that's not something that God would do, blah, 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 whatever. And I was like, yeah, you're right. That's not how it worked. That's completely correct. But that doesn't prove anything. That just means that you're not on the right path. I mean, that's it.
Well,
I mean,
yeah, I think a lot of times, okay, like when we talk about father, mother, like when we were talking earlier about we live in a dualistic reality. When we talk about feminine energy and masculine energy, I don't think that necessarily means girl or boy, but father is masculine. And I agree, like God, it just makes sense to me that God would be masculine. I wonder too, when people talk about like the return of Christ, I wonder if, I don't know that would be, in my mind, I don't see some man like just descending from the clouds, pristine and wonderful. Like, I wonder if it doesn't mean that the consciousness of the planet reaches Christ consciousness, like this critical mass is reached, and that's what the return of Christ is. I don't know. It's all really interesting, but the biggest thing for me is always like, I don't really know. I mean, like, when you have a platform, or you get, you have a channel, you can talk about things, and you can theorize, and you can research. And that, I think the reason people probably respect you so much, Josh, is because you don't ever claim to know it all. Do you know what I mean? You'll say,
hmm
some people are terrified of saying, I don't know, but I'm not. Like, I say this all the time. I don't know. I just like the questions. So,
And somebody said the Holy Spirit. I see, and I don't agree. Overbuilt automotive. I believe that God, like what we believe of as God, can be an avatar tethered to the Holy Spirit, and that is one version. But when you go and you look at all the different religions and you look at the different levels, there are multiple densities, and of course, the sixth and seventh densities. When you get into those, which are dimensions, you start to realize that is the abode of God, and then you get into the seventh heaven. That's God. That's where He's at. But we
right.
can't achieve that, and it's not something you can find on the outside. It's something you have to find. The kingdom of God is found within, not out in the world.
100%.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I agree. What did that guy say? That the spirit is the feminine form of stuff? I don't know. I mean, feminine is chaos and masculine is order. And a masculine would be like the container.
Yeah.
I don't know that I agree with that, but then, of course I could be wrong.
Yeah,
I
and
think
I
it's
saw that somebody posted that, I mean, and that's you believe what you want to believe, but if you follow the teachings of Christ, and it's so important, because when you follow where He was and where He went, He was all over the East. He did not stay put in the Middle East. He didn't. He left the Levant. And the people
yeah.
ask me, they're like, "Well, why do you know this? How do you know this?" I know this because there's records of Him all over the East. There's
Mm,
records of Him in India. There's records of Him in the Forbidden Kingdom. There's records of Him all over the Silk Road. They have
yeah.
all kinds of shrines and all kinds of things where Christ was at. We in the
Yeah.
West, though, what's really sad is, like, we're so far behind in the race. We think we're in the lead.
Oh goodness, I know. Yeah.
Yeah, and that is, to me, the issue. And it goes back to the whole, like, you're talking about the rake thing and all that. I get hundreds of stories of these creatures and these, and people give me stories all the time. And then I tell them on the show, and it's up to you whether you want to believe these people or not. If you don't want to believe them, don't believe them. I tend to believe most of the people saw something. And they
Right.
tell me what they tell me because they saw what they saw. And
Yeah, and I mean, for most people, they're being validated for the first time, and it's because it's hard. Like when someone tells you you're crazy or you didn't see. I mean, that invalidation is so painful. It's like a threat to your very existence. But like, I don't know that I don't know that beliefs were necessarily designed to be true. I think they were probably it's more like a design to control behavior, not in a bad way or malicious way, but so we will behave. Um, because I mean, not everything we believe is true, and I think a lot of people can believe different things, and all things can be true at the same time.
yeah,
So in the chat, there seems to be people still kind of talking about it. So I mean, whether God is male, female, I mean, ultimately we have to understand that God is not a man, God is not a woman, God is not a flesh and blood being. So everything about God transcends gender, race,
our understanding
yeah,
at all.
Yeah, I
I
understanding.
agree.
You know,
I was
even like time, he's outside of time.
I was gonna
You
say
know,
it, like, I don't know who said it, but there was a quote that if my God was fathomable, He wouldn't be my God,
Yeah,
yeah,
and it's as
I
simple as
love
that.
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, our barber said that.
I think.
yeah,
It was Ryan.
Yeah.
and it's the
He
same
actually, our
thing.
barber, Ryan Dinsmore.
Uh-huh.
He said that to me. He goes, if somebody was arguing with him about it, because he worked in a place where most of the people there were atheists, and they were very there wasn't. I guarantee you, he was the only Christian there, and he was very staunch in his belief. He goes to church. He used to. He lives in Michigan now, and but my cousin Travis used to go to church with him, and he said, dude, if somebody was arguing with him about it, because these smarmy people, they read a book, and I read Atlas Shrugged, and I know everything, and so then they get real smarmy, and they think they're going to trip you up with some kind of bullcrap, and then you just lay it out there. People have told me that I'm naive too for believing in God and things like that, and then somebody told me the other day, there's like, if you were just a skeptic like me, you wouldn't have any of these problems. I go, oh, you still have the problems. You would just have no foundation, a way to solve them or fix them or go about doing anything. Because
Right.
the Word made
No
flesh
moral
is
way of
within all of
conducting
us.
yourself. Right.
The
Yeah.
fool says in his
Yeah.
heart there is no
There is
God,
no
and
God,
professing
yeah.
themselves to be wise, they became fools.
Yeah. So when you go back, you have to find that there is a source to all of this. What I find interesting, though, and I've said this, and I'll talk about it in my books too, is that there is an inner earth, and it's something that people have a hard time dealing with. I had somebody attack me recently in a group, and they're like, "Oh, this is that guy," and I assume this is how he sounds because his spelling was atrocious.
I'm
Maybe
sure
he was
it
just
is.
on the toilet and he was trying to type really fast. He was trying to out type me.
Yeah.
And so he was like, he goes, this guy talks about inner earth, Nephilim, blah, 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 blah. And I couldn't even read the last word he said. And I was like,
It's like everybody knows you're writing this from your mom's basement.
yeah, exactly. I mean, and so you're like, okay, dude, you put World of Warcraft down for a minute so you could argue with me and whatever. But he was making his point in one of the groups that I was really adult and a stupid person because I believed in a God, and that I actually believed that there was a source, which many scientists have confirmed that. Many scientists have confirmed that. And I believe that science will eventually get to the point where it tells you this isn't what it is. When you go down the proverbial rabbit hole with some of these alien abductions, one of the things that comes up, and this is really telling, a lot of people will be having these abductions and they'll either speak out, cry out to God, and they'll stop. It's like there's some sort of legality there, like when Rick was on the show.
Mm-hmm.
And it was demon or alien. What is it? But it's both. Why is it both, Anthony?
Well, because the term alien, I mean, if we look at how we use that word, because the way we use words is very important. We use the word in an everyday form to mean different things. It can mean little green men, or it can mean someone in a country to which they are not native. It can refer to human beings too. So if we apply that to the metaphysical or the supernatural, it still holds up. So if something is an alien, or I'm sorry, if something is an angel, or if it's a demon, those are two different beings, but neither one of them is native to this planet. They are not from Earth like we are.
Yeah,
So technically,
Right.
they're
they're
both
still
aliens.
They're aliens.
So it's not like all aliens are demons or all aliens are angels. It's the other way around. It's like it's an umbrella term. Like here's the term alien up here, and then below it are like categories: angel, demon, jinn, whatever. They're not from this world.
Yeah.
It's that simple.
And also, when it talks about the Elohim, I believe there's a plurality going on there. I believe that a lot of the Old Testament, which has caused a massive amount of confusion and a lot of anxiety, and it's given rise to a lot of principalities to lord and rule and have power over people. And a lot of these people, they use the Old Testament. They don't use the New Testament, I'm telling you. It's not... And then they call themselves Christians and they did bad things in the name of Christ, but they used the Code of Deuteronomy. They used essentially what was the Torah, and they used that to kind of lord over and control people. But then it got lumped together with the New Testament, which I don't think is correct. And that's not a popular opinion. I can bring it all together one day if people wanted to hear it. It's probably something I would have to do at like another site like Rumble, which is why I'm looking into maybe starting a channel there so I could get deeper into this, because it's not something I can really do here. But I do believe that there was a lot of misuse and abuse going on, and it came from the Old Testament. And the New Testament was not, people don't understand, like they don't really listen or hear the words of Christ. What they do is they say, oh, it all has to do with the Old Testament. The New Testament is completing it. And then they say he was a sacrifice and all this other stuff. And I tell people all the time, I was like, it's way deeper than that. It goes way deeper than that. And it's scientific. It really does get scientific. It's like dimensions, and Christ could do the things he could do because he was in tune scientifically, literally. If you get down to the smallest molecules, there is no. This is all just an agreed upon reality.
That's very true.
It's all vibration.
Yes, I love when science will prove some part of the Bible. You know where it says like the sins of the father passed down to the the third generation. I can't. I don't know the exact quote. I could tell you the Lord's Prayer from memory, but I don't know the exact Bible verse. Do you know what I'm talking about? Okay, so there were these scientists did these studies with these mice, and the first group of mice, they had them in these cages, and they would shock them, and they would ring a bell, and these mice went on and had, I think baby mice are called pups, right? I could be wrong. Anyway, so the pups grow up and they hear the bell, and they're not even getting the shock, but they're reacting to it. So like the DNA has changed, the trauma's passed down, and so they basically proved generational trauma. And that was fascinating to me,
because that is what it means.
Yeah, I know.
When somebody says, because I had somebody ask me that one time when I was young, and we were at a youth camp together, and I answered a question, and of course, camp counselor wasn't really happy with the way I answered it because he had a very strict, literal version of the Bible in his mind. And one of the things that he said, that the sins are visited upon generations upon generations. And I said, what if that's not really what it is? I was like a teenager. And I said, what if it's like, a sin is continued on through the DNA of, what if, and I don't think I used the word DNA, but I understood you're related to that person. So you have their traits. And it takes 2 or 3 generations to wash that out. Because I have my dad's DNA and I have my mother's DNA, and you have to overcome that. Now, somebody said in the chat here, Silver Moon says, Jesus is an ascended master that overcame this world, but there are many worlds and universes. Yes, there are. Literally, there are worlds within worlds. I'll tell you a story. There was a woman who gave me a story at the conference, the last conference we were at. And I overheard her talking to one of the people that were there. It was either David Weatherly or I think it might have been Ron Murphy, one of them. But anyway, they were talking, and I was listening, and she was saying, I had a dream within a dream within a dream. Have you ever heard of this? And of course, I interrupted and was like, yeah, I've heard of that. You got to tell me about it. And then they told me to sit down and shut up, and I did. I'm kidding, folks. That's not what happened. That's not what happened. No, I said, have you heard of this? And I think it was David, but I don't want to misquote, but I think David said something to her about it. And I had to go off and do what I had to do because I was running around, And then I ended up talking to her later on outside when she was outside with her husband.
Bless you. Bless you.
And I said, can you go back and reiterate what you had said about a dream within a dream within a dream? She just said, yes, I can. And she's like, I woke up 3 times, and every time I woke up, I was in a different place. I was in my house. Well, at that time, it was her apartment. And she was going to school, I think, in Tennessee or something like that. And she's like, I kept waking up over and over again in a different version of my apartment, but I kept going back to sleep and waking back up.
I've had that happen. It's called a false awakening.
It is so weird. So what is that? And she said, was it real? I said, did you get up and drink a glass of water? Yeah. I said, okay, you drank a glass of water. You were in an alternate reality. I have gone to alternate realities multiple times, and when I say something like that, then they're like, this guy's talking about he's an astral projector, and that's satanic, and we're going to go on these other idiots' channels and say that in the comment section because we're stupid. But anyway.
That's funny,
if it's satanic, though, then why, as a small child, how did I just automatically do that? I would leave my
You were
body and run
satanic.
laps around my yard.
Yeah,
You
it's
know,
because you're of the
like
devil.
I,
You're
You
of
were
the
a hair
devil.
chick from birth.
That's
I
why
know
you
a
saw
witch.
that demon, and it was to grab your soul. In fact, you are an animated corpse, and your soul's already in hell.
It's
Mhm.
the truth, zombie, straight up.
Yeah.
It ain't nothing but the truth.
You know,
Hold this
I think
copperhead, let it bite you on the lips, and we'll see what happens.
Mhm.
Look, sometimes when I speak, you can tell I'm from the South. Just sometimes, though.
I was gonna say it's
That
fu-
makes you more of the devil.
Of course it does.
You're of the super devil at this point.
it's funny that we're talking about like a dream within a dream because I just woke up from one of those today. Like like I had a dream that you, Wolf, were having like this really bad lower back pain, and you know how I pop my back all the time. Like I'll just kind of do. Oh, I popped it right now.
Oh, I'm very proud of you.
But anyway, but so like I knew like that if I could show you how to do it, that like and I was trying to show you how to do it, like you were on the bed and I was like, okay, just lay down like this, and then you turn your hips like this and put your legs like this, blah blah blah, and
Were you touching me in this dream?
no,
Thank God.
but like I knew that if you did this, it would fix it. Like I just like in the dream, like I knew it in my heart, and the whole time you were like complaining and saying like, oh, this isn't gonna work. This is bull crap. You're wasting my time. Blah blah blah.
As
You
he
know,
does.
and
Shut
yeah,
up.
take that. No, but and like the more you did that, like I was getting so mad because like I knew like in the dream I felt it in my heart that if you just did exactly as I said, it would work and it would crack your back and it would take your pain away. But you just weren't having it. So I I got really mad and I took your phone and like I threw it and I broke it. And like immediately I regretted it and I felt terrible. But then I woke up and I just remember I remember like thinking about that and I remembered it and I was like, man, that I can't believe I got that mad at him for something. I mean, like I know why I got that mad, but it's still not an excuse to break my uncle's cell phone. That's dumb. And, and then like I was in the house, but then I like later on I woke up from that, so I realized it was a dream within a dream. It's
Yeah.
weird.
Oh goodness.
Yeah,
Listen
I
to
mean, and
this.
that's pretty
Oh,
much
go
what
ahead.
happens. Go ahead, Missy. Did you have something to say?
Yeah, this is just it's related to what we're talking about.
Go
Okay,
ahead.
when I was a kid, my mom put me to bed one night, tucked me in, I went to sleep, and I woke up and I was somewhere else, and I was someone else. Like same age, kind of, but I was in the countryside, and I lived in this cabin, and I had these brothers and sisters, and I knew them all and loved them, and we like slept in this loft thing, and we had farm animals, and I went through that entire day and like lived out that life. And then when I went to bed that night, I woke up the next morning and I was back in my now room or my
Mm-hmm.
and it I will never forget that. And I can't really make sense of it. Like, where did I go? Was I really there? Because I know it did not feel like a dream. It was like I lived that. So it's wild.
I tell everybody this when I give somebody a business card and they look at it and they kind of like looking at it like they're thinking about looking at the show, whatever. I always tell them, I say, if you don't watch any of my episodes, watch the one on alternate realities. If there's no other show you watch, just watch that one, or the one with ancient civilizations. Used to be Bible theology, but the ones with Paul Wallace, and me and Paul Anthony Wallace became good friends, and we started conversating, and I'm going to bring him back on. He just released his last book. He's written, I think, 4 books now. Scars of Eden. I think it's his last. Look it up because I want to make sure I'm not wrong about that. I think his last one was Scars of Eden. But we started talking, and I'll never forget. I was at one of my accounts doing security, and I was checking on the guard. And I just started having a conversation with him. Of course, he's in Australia. We're hours apart, like 14, 15 hours, whatever. And we had this long conversation. And when he was talking, I was just like in agreement with what he was saying. And I had only watched 1 or 2 videos of his at that point because somebody had said, hey, check out this guy a long time ago. And I was just like, I didn't have time to do all that. But
It's his latest book is The Eden Conspiracy.
The Eden Conspiracy. And
And he
so,
wrote The Scars of Eden also, right?
yeah, he wrote
Has
that.
humanity Yeah, has humanity confused the idea of God with memories of ET? That's like on my list to read next. It's on
Yeah.
my Amazon list. That's so cool.
Definitely get into that because he has a lot. I don't. It's not 100% with me and him because nobody's going to be 100%. You're not an echo chamber. But
Right.
if you were to look at like how I view the world and how he views the world is very similar, and our views on what religion is. The translations are most important. And I
Yeah.
can't do that here on the show. I can't just sit here and spout off translations because my show is based more around storytelling, or retelling encounters, and then other people coming on the show and telling their encounters themselves. But when you go deep, 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 and unfortunately, we mislabeled those. And Anthony named them, and he does the best he can. But sometimes the titles just they don't attract
They
anybody.
can't all be winners.
They can't. The
Yeah.
titles just can't. Yeah, they can't all be winners. And so he named it Bible Theology, which was boring, and nobody watched them. I got like 5,000 views on those shows, and I think that those were some of the most pivotal, some of the most important, because it'll give you a base and a foundation to know where I'm coming from.
Right.
And so if you go back, and I'm going to have him on the show again, and then we're probably going to do it again on the pre-records.
So you know him? You know Paul Wallace?
Yeah, I know Paul. Yeah, Paul's a good friend of mine. It just,
That's so cool.
just like, and people get him confused with Paul Sinclair. Now, Paul Sinclair is another good one, but he's Dogman Supreme over there in UK. That guy can rattle off stories like you wouldn't believe. He's done tons of stories on the Barneston Dream, the Flixton Werewolf, and he's got a lot of good theories. And me and him went down the rabbit hole together and kind of came to the same conclusion too. And we were both DER alumni. And so, I got to know a lot of these people, and not everybody's going to believe the same way you do because people are at different levels. And I had a conversation with Dark Waters about this one day, and we were talking about it. And he goes, "Yeah, you're not going to believe like I do." And I don't. And he's like, everybody's at a different level,
What
like,
a
and it's not for me
yeah.
to press and push. People have to learn at their own pace. And I love my audience. And if you don't agree with me right now, don't throw it out. Because maybe one day I'll agree. I'll think more like you, or you'll think more like me. And the tendency is the human tendency, and this is most important, is to make a snap judgment, and you make a huge
Mm.
error, and you think, well, this guy doesn't believe anything. You throw this person out. The only time you should throw people out is when they have shown you over and over and over again that they are not a worthwhile person morally. Because when
Right.
somebody is trying to do the right thing morally, even if they're wrong, even if they're dead wrong, they are trying to do the moral right thing. And a lot of Christians really are. But they're confounded by the little bit of information that they have in the King James Version and how it's so turned around. They
Right.
don't know which way is up because the King James
Yeah.
Version was not really written for you to learn. The King James Version was altered and messed with so that you would be under control.
I agree with that
And when I
completely.
say
Yeah.
that, people they lose their freaking minds. I've had people threaten to kill me.
Yeah. Though, what a boring world it would be if everyone believed the same thing. How would we ever evolve? I think
Especially if
that
it's wrong. If
yeah,
everybody believes the wrong thing, which is what communism is. It's everybody doing the wrong thing.
right. Well, yeah. But I mean, all the things that make us different are the same, I mean, it's the same kind of archetypal, and I think the point is to seek and learn. If you're not learning, you're dead. You've just got to keep. I don't know. I've always had that like deep sense of curiosity in me, and I used to be a little bit like stuck up and real. I guess when we're young, we all are. We think we're right and everyone else is stupid, and I'm guilty of that sometimes still. But you don't know someone's experiences. You don't know what their life's been like or why they believe what they do. And so I think you just be kind and don't, like you said, don't just throw things out, and we would get so much further.
Yeah.
It's the self-righteous indignation that holds us back for
And
sure.
then people like to spout off, the Bible and with certain passages and stuff. And I'm always like, Dude, and I don't even know them all by heart. I've read it upside down and backwards. I've read it when I was a kid, even. It's like memorize the books of the Bible. I don't have all the passages because the King James version to me is like I don't want to sit there and argue about something that I don't think has a lot of validity. And so it's like I'm arguing with someone about something that they believe, and I could really care less because I know that that's not it.
What? Yes, know what
Yeah.
you're fighting for.
If somebody is
100%.
building, I look at it like this, Missy. If somebody's building a house and they've laid the foundation and then they've done the framework, and you go in and you start arguing with them about the roof, which isn't even on there yet or isn't finished, like
Mhm.
what are you arguing about? You're arguing about an unfinished product, and it's still in the making. You're not going to be arguing about cabinets and whatever else when you haven't even finished the framework. Get a roof on it and some walls up before you start arguing about cabinets and tile and all that. And that's the problem, is that people get too far ahead of themselves and they want to throw out anything you say that could challenge their paradigm. And what really frustrates me and frustrates a lot of people is that people are not theologians, but everybody nowadays thinks that they are a researcher and that they are a theologian, and you're not.
Right.
And
Well, if you Google something, then you know everything.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times too, people are arguing semantics. It's just like they're arguing about terminology. This means this and this means that, and they don't even realize they're talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
It's just like it can be really frustrating. But
Minutia,
I
you
try.
get caught up in the minutia.
Yeah, they care more
Yes.
about being right than actually finding out what's going on. And I
And
think that's our biggest issue.
It is. I get that though, because it's fun to be right. I love being right. I'm like a pig in mud, but I don't mind admitting when I'm wrong, and I'm not embarrassed to be wrong. I think a little humility goes a long way.
Yeah, but the thing is like in this situation is like you can't be there. You literally cannot be right. You cannot be right about cryptids. You cannot be right about ghosts. You cannot be right about things that you cannot actively research and have real evidence about. So it's like
You
these
can
are
only be right about yours.
exactly like you don't, so I mean, and even then it's like you can't prove that. And so in a sense, it's like there's no way for you to really be right. So two people are arguing about the two different sides of a coin, and they're both wrong in a way because
Wow.
they're trying to
Yeah.
get it correct when in reality being wrong is the only way to be correct, because you're not going to figure out a way unless you're willing to have all of everything kind of torn apart, and then you finally are left with what's the right way. And
Yes, so much. Like when people will say like, how do you know what you want in life? Well, I know because I've experienced a lot of what I don't want. That's how I know.
Yeah, exactly. You
You
can
know?
learn. You don't have to get hit in the face to know it hurts, but it kind of helps because you're like, I've been hit in the face and it sucks. I don't want it to
Yeah.
happen again. So,
Don't wanna
Devin,
see
thank
those
you for that
stars.
donation. Devin, that's actually Lee's son. His uncle, okay, ladies and gentlemen, Devin Robles right there. His uncle is the person that I saw the Dogman with. We were 15 years old. Devin is his nephew. Devin, I don't believe you were alive at that time yet. And your dad was a little boy. And I don't know what he saw or didn't see when it went up to the window, but it's very fascinating. It's crazy that he's in the chat. I didn't know you watched my show, young man, but I can tell you this, and I don't know if you heard me talking about your grandmother, but she was a very special woman to me, and so is your grandfather. They were very, very, very important people in my life, still to this day. And your uncles and your dad and family are too. But Blue Cruz says, when I think of what I know of Jesus Christ and the miraculous works that I've been led to believe that he performed, I wonder if quantum physics and mechanics and consciousness comes into play. I believe it does. I really do. And then Monkey Boy says, people care more about being right instead of righteous. Exactly. That is, that is part and parcel. Like, that's the problem is you want to be right. Like, I've sat up here before and told people I was wrong. I made mistakes. Yes, I have overtalked my audience, or my guests, gotten on a tangent, and I had Sibylla Irwin on. I got to get her on both her heart. I got to get her back on and let her speak. because I had much to say, and I thought, I just have much to say, and overlook what other people have to say, because what they have to say is important too. The first time I got David Wedley on my show, I overtalked him, and I did because I get so excited. But a real man, which I believe I am, will step up and say, I was wrong. I did wrong. I made mistakes. I was overzealous. I got into arguments with people that I shouldn't have. I shouldn't even have stooped to certain people's level. And I made mistakes on certain people I chose to work with early on in my career. And those people were not good people. And I found out later that they did certain people wrong. And I just, you can't as a man, as a human being, man or woman, you can't sit there and not cop to what you've done. You have to say, hey, I made a mistake.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
so many people can't do that. It's like poison to their soul to try to say, hey, I made a mistake.
Yeah.
Well, they think that that'll just, everything will fall apart and it'll just like ruin their career or whatever they're aiming towards. But that's actually not what happens. People really respect when you'll just say, okay, I messed up. I was wrong. It's huge. It's when I see somebody doing that, I'm like, okay, you're my kind of people, because I mess up a lot too. I get things wrong a lot too. But I also believe like everybody's better than the worst thing they've ever done. Except for people who hurt children. I don't
Exactly.
have any.
Well, you know what
Yeah.
Jesus says about that?
Yeah, there was a very specific punishment you prescribed for that.
Yep,
Yeah.
I do know.
He says, you can look the verse up. I don't know the verse about. I know what it says though. To tie a weight around your neck and throw yourself in the water, it'd be better that you were never born, because that is the truth. One of those that hurts these children. That is exactly right. Devin said something. He says, what do you say here? I think I lost it.
My dad had said he doesn't remember the night too well. Just that you.
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah,
Just that you and Daniel had come running in fast and very scared.
Yeah, I think that his dad was probably, gosh, he must have been 8 or 9 years old. He was a little kid, and I think he was in his room, and he came out, and I remember Martha like not letting him go to the window because the thing was by the window. His mother, if I remember correctly, and I was sitting on the couch, and he came over there, and I was in shock. I was just sitting there going like, what did I just see? But his grandfather had an experience with what I believe may have been the same thing, but it was very metaphysical. It was like a black shadow dog type thing that was swirling around the backyard. There were people in that neighborhood too that I interviewed too later on, and I go deep on it, and I talk about it in my book that's coming out. Like I said, it'll be out at the end of July, and I'm sure it'll raise a controversy, and people will say some things and want to try to call us liars or whatever the heck they want to say. Let them say what they want to say. I know what happened. I was there. Daniel knows what happened. He's a preacher in my hometown. He told that story on the night that we buried his mother. So if it's make-believe, why would you say that? So it is what it is. A lot of people are going to say what they're going to say. Missy, I'm gonna let you go. Thank you for being on the show.
It's past my bedtime. I did too, but thank you so much. I had so much fun. And you're really mean, Josh. I can't believe that you still have a platform. All those pool noodles y'all hit each other with?
Yeah.
No, he just actually just grabs my arms. So then
I just squeeze people's arms like a demon, and then
Josh actually threatened me. So if I didn't come on tonight, something horrible would happen to me. I'm just kidding.
I'm like, you never know. Somebody could come to your house. Maybe take your cat out, and who knows? Maybe your cat doesn't come back.
Maybe you wake up with the cat head in your bed.
And your cat's unalive, and then there's the cat head, and then the whole thing is,
But she came on because Wolf made her an offer she couldn't refuse.
She couldn't refuse. I could give you a box of crackers and some sardines. Maybe you could come on.
They pull me back in.
Okay, we're friends now. Y'all are my friends now, so we're gonna have to do this again. I had so much fun, and let's talk, Josh. I want to tell you about give you my stories and tell you about the stuff. So let's get in touch soon.
Yeah, and we're gonna do that on a pre-record so that you can lay it out there. So
okay, well, this might be something that we want to talk about. Just like this is an idea I've had for a long time. It's like a big deal, and I think you would be interested, and it was cool to find out that like you're actually doing this thing too. So maybe talk
Oh,
about it
okay.
like,
The
yeah,
water
between
torture thing
ourselves
you were talking.
first.
Oh, never
Oh,
mind. I'm
oh.
joking. I thought you were talking about working at, okay, never mind.
Like a way to, what I'll explain it to
Torturing
you later.
people to get stories from them. We
Yeah,
have
well,
ways of making you talk. No, I'm just kidding.
the way it would be like it's kind of like a web crawler. It crawls the internet for stories, and then it categorizes them, and then you can visualize that data like in a pretty beautiful way. And if it's open source, then nobody can be like, oh, those are my do your thing. What do you say? Those are my stories. What's it you're
Yeah,
saying to
because
Josh?
people will tell me that I tell people's story because we have had people that told stories to Darkness Prevails, Supernaturalists,
Bettina
What
Moss,
Lurks Beneath,
yeah.
Bettina Moss, Tony Merkel. Yes,
We're a community. That's
some
the thing.
people go make the rounds. Matt Imps, he's not my guy. Matt's a
Yeah.
good guy, and I love Matt, but he's told his story on other channels. I had somebody recently said, I would love to tell you my story. I'm going to get this person on the show. I guarantee it, because he's a good guy. He said, I'd love to tell you my story, but I was on DER. And I said, I don't care.
Right.
Me
These
or
stories
Vic,
don't.
we don't own the rights to your story. I mean, if
No,
you
they
and I'll go in depth. We'll go deeper. We'll take it to another
yeah.
level.
Right, but if we are all like collaborating, we could find out a whole lot more if everybody's not fighting over who, what story belongs to who, because the story belongs to the experiencer.
Well, I mean, the
Yes.
story is going to be the same, but the questions will always be different. I mean, they might not. I mean, what other
That's very
people's
true.
perspective and what they have to offer is always going to be different. So it would
That's
just wouldn't it
true.
be worthwhile to be hoarding all these stories
Yeah.
and acting like
People retell my story all the time.
they belong to us. It's
Right,
ridiculous.
I agree, man. I agree with so much of what y'all say. Okay, well, I'm gonna go. Tell chat that I said goodbye, and they
Yeah,
were awesome,
they
and
can
thank
hear
you
you.
for having me.
Okay.
Oh, okay. All right, good.
All right.
Bye,
I'll see
guys.
you.
Yeah, we'll talk soon. Bye bye.
All right, bye. So,
Would you still want that verse or no?
sure.
So the verse is actually
It's not going away.
hang on.
I got it.
Okay, so the verse is Luke 17:2. It were better for him that a millstone were hanged around his neck, and he cast into the sea, that he should offend one of these little ones.
Yes, exactly. And going back to what she said about people telling my stories, dude, there have been 2 whole books. I found out through Jeff Nadolny on one of them, and I don't talk to Jeff that much, but I saw his review, and it was pretty funny. He wrote a review of this guy's story that he told on Amazon. Oh,
Bless
God,
you.
this is horrible.
Thank you, Texas Front Porch. Looking forward to the conference. So are we.
Take me off the camera for a minute so I can do this. I'm so sorry, folks. I got to keep doing this.
It is- we were all three having some issues here.
Yeah, well, I don't know what this is, but
The show doesn't stop. We don't believe in it. All right.
if I have to be in my hospital bed, I'm going to sit here talking. Yeah, Devin, actually, he said I could never get the stories out of my grandpa. You know why? I believe, and I'll say it on the show, Martha really, she believed, Devin, that this thing that we saw, that me and Dan saw, was a diablo. It was a devil. And she didn't like us to talk about it. She thought that and a lot of Mexican people, they believe if we talk about these things, you talk it up. Your mom's like that too.
Mm-hmm.
She's
You
like, don't
invite
talk
it.
about that. Don't talk about that. So Martha was very against that. And I think that your abuelito, he was like that. He honored her wishes and not really, which is another reason when I don't want people going and messing with him and trying to get information from them and their family. I hope they leave them alone. Daniel's very open. He'll talk about it. He doesn't care. And his brother talked about it some. But I don't think they're really interested in going in depth and detail about it. It's not, and that has to be respected, because of your grandmother and what she believed. And I think that's probably why your abuelito doesn't really talk about it much. Me and him have talked about it, and we've talked about his experience that happened in the backyard with this canid-looking shadow creature, which I think has something to do with that. But you have to also remember, that and mijo, it's very important that you need to like always be prayed up. And you got to remember that town, when you're walking the streets of that town and you feel your hair stand up on the back of your neck, there's something there. Because in my book comes out, you'll see, I interviewed a good many people from that community who saw these things. And they're not lying. These people saw what they saw. I know 1990 was the big year for that, but there was a bunch of people who saw it different times too. Years before and years after. And so when you go down that rabbit hole, be very careful, because my own cousin on my dad's side saw La Chusa there in that home. And I believe Anthony had an encounter with what I think was La Llorona. And, and it was him and a bunch of his friends. There used to be a lot of dark brujeria that went on in that town. And I think there was a resurgence, about 20, 30 years ago. And who knows why these things happen the way they do. But don't go out at night by yourself and just wandering around, whatever. Be safe. Take care of yourself. Watch out, because that town does have a dangerous energy to it. And there are a lot of towns like that. And I believe it goes back to Lauren Coleman when he says the name game. Because he did, and I've talked to Lauren on multiple occasions, and he does believe that. Like, there's something to the name. Like Taylor, Michigan, Taylor, Mississippi, Taylor, Texas. Why? I don't know. But it could go back so far that there's no way to even trace it.
Yeah, I mean, it's so hard to say. It could just be something as simple as, like, a lot of people have doing bad deeds with that name, and it then somehow generated some kind of curse, and now anything related.
Or maybe somebody who founded it, they were all from the same family.
Yeah, it's like, who really knows? But as for some reason, they're all connected through the fact that they're hotspots for supernatural.
And every state has a devil's backbone. Like LBL has a devil's backbone. I didn't know that. Like, until I was talking to Martin Groves and Barton about it. And they were like, devil's backbone, because we have a devil's backbone.
And it's, because like that's one of the first things I realized when you're researching is how similar, or how many other places you'll find who kind of have like similar paranormal like things going on. Like, I don't want to say like the exact same, but it's like I've noticed that like when I was reaching the devil's backbone, like I would look at some of the other states and they were kind of explaining something that they would like, they'll be like, oh, I think we have that here too. Yeah. But it's not like they're all the same. It's like some of them are connected closer, than some of them are a little bit farther apart, but they almost all have like at least one aspect that's kind of similar to each other.
There's something, a thread that ties it all together. Yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah, and I do believe there's something to, what Martha would say about, talking it up or talking it into existence. It would just kind of be, she would tell us, don't talk about it. Don't bring it up, and she talked about it one time, and that was, she told my brother, and she told Scorpio, and she told Squid. And, oh, God. Oh, my goodness gracious.
You change the filters in here, maybe? Do you think?
I didn't get sick from here.
I'm just saying, you're sneezing a lot here.
Oh, dude, it's been bad.
Oh, yeah.
Day. I think I went to the apartment and worked in it for a couple of days trying to get it.
And that mold's getting bad.
There's mold in there.
Yeah.
Change it over. Right. There's mold in them there walls. So I think that what happens, though, is that people get, like, they have experiences and everybody tells it from their perspective. Mm-hmm. Like, this is what happened to me. But if you put it all together, it's like one big mosaic, one big picture. But you can't really get to that picture unless everybody gets on the same page and talks about it. But there was one night when I remember Martha talking. I had asked her, I said, look, my brother had teased me about it. He was living up in Michigan when all this was going on. And when he came down here, he was like kind of teasing us about, I asked her, I said, can you please tell the story from your perspective of what happened to you? And she told it one night, and she told it to these guys. And after that, Scorpion and Squid and Diablo, they all believed. And they didn't mess with me because she told them what happened from her perspective. And she didn't like it. And it made her anxious and like tear up. She didn't like talking about it. It was evil. She believed that she almost lost us that night, that me and Daniel were in danger of being killed. And it really offends me when people say, oh, you were in no danger. These things weren't going to hurt you. If they wanted to hurt you, they would. It was trying. I can tell you that right there. It would have. Okay. And so you're going like, okay, you can spin it however you want, and you can believe in your little paradigm that it wasn't going to hurt you.
It's just a matter.
But they do.
It's a matter of perspective. I mean, we don't even have to go into the supernatural. We could just go back in history, like, you know, speaking of Native Americans, to some people, these were people who would trade with you and they were cool. And to other people, these were absolute monsters, savages who would do the most horrible things to you. So it's like, it's all just
Matter of
perspective. Like, what did you deal with at the time that you dealt with it? If you dealt with some benevolent creature that came and gave you hugs and kisses and had a little picnic with you, then yeah, you're going to think that's all they are. But if... Sorry, you can go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, if you're dealing with a monster that came charging at you, you're not going to see it as anything other than a monster.
Yeah.
And it's actually offensive for you to be like, that's not a monster, when it's like, that monster came at me with claws and fangs and eyes of that scared me. So it's like, yeah, it's just, you know, and it's really just shows the lack of someone's mental fortitude or really even ability to understand other people, to not really see that perspective and to understand that perspective, that maybe the creature you saw was just in a good mood and it was full.
Yeah, he wasn't hungry at that time.
It could be as simple as that.
I'm going to tell a story. Now, there's a couple stories I'm going to tell on Sunday's show. Show up for the live stream on Sunday. We don't have a guest. And we're going to talk about a couple stories that I'm going to get into. One involves... The heck was that? One involves a ghost... Not ghost, it's a haunting / werewolf story. And then there's another one that is about the tooth fairy. I know that sounds really weird, but you're going to see what I'm talking about. And I believe that when you look at these stories and you understand like what people go through as children, it traumatizes you, and it creates... It can create a schism between a child and their peers that is hard to overcome. And they can be insulted and berated and made fun of, that scars them emotionally. Luckily, I was already like 15 when it happened, but it did give me it scarred me. It made me feel people thinking I was crazy, saying silly things to us, you know, and getting into fights because people were making fun of us. Yet there were all these other people, unbeknownst to me at the time, that had these same experiences. And then in my book, I bring it together and I tell it. But what you got to do is you got to understand and you got to realize that your experiences are your experiences, and people cannot spin. They can spin theirs, but they can't spin yours. Mm-hmm. And it goes back to what I said earlier about, you know, I couldn't remember whether or not I really saw that shadow demon thing or not. And I know we heard a gunshot and then there was no gunshot. So what was that? There were 3 of us that heard it. I know that. I know. I think maybe years later, it was imprinted on me that I saw some sort of demon in the window or something. And maybe I saw it, maybe I didn't. I don't know. So I don't say 100% about this first story I told on the show, you know. But I will say this. When somebody comes to me and they have a story to tell, I don't throw them out and be like, oh, yeah, well, that's, you know, I'm the authority here. Let me tell you what you really saw, okay? It was a ferret, okay? You know, it was an attack weasel. You know, it got loose, and, you know, you just blew it up to be 8 foot tall, and that's what happened. Because you have people that do that.
Yeah.
Especially in the Bigfoot community. I mean, they will browbeat somebody until they take away anything metaphysical or a portal or anything at all, and they'll be like, well, that didn't happen, because that can't happen, because these things are all, you know, giant apes running around out there.
Yeah, and it's ridiculous because then all you get a story is of like, I saw ape go through tree disappear. Oh, and then it's like that's their entire story, because you take away the entire meat of it, you take away anything else that could have happened. So then all you really are left with is like a 2 or 3 second sometimes incident where they just see Bigfoot real quick, when it's like they don't explain anything that happened before or anything that happened after, because it doesn't fit their narrative. And it's a bit ridiculous because we're not going to move forward anywhere if we keep doing that.
Yeah, and berating people and browbeating people into what you want them, the paradigm you want
It's
them
going
to
to
be
force
in.
them into silence.
If anybody knows, anytime I've ever talked, I keep anonymity very important if it's important to the person. I don't like saying last names. I don't care about the credibility. I just don't like it because people get messed with. And then they get browbeat into who knows what. And but I will say first names oftentimes. But here's the thing. When somebody tells me their story, I never accuse them of lying. Even if I'm thinking it in my head, I still got to listen to what they have to say. And one of the things that I ran into when I was doing the interviews for the books, and I had some really dear friends of mine helping me with the interviews for these books, not to mention the 2 people sitting across from me, Ken Gerhard, Barton Nunley, very instrumental in helping me get this to come to fruition.
Not to mention David for the
David
advice,
Weatherly,
Lyle,
Lyle, Nick Redfern. These were
talking.
people that talked me into doing it. They're like, dude, you're smart. Do it. So I did it. But here's the thing. When you go and you look at these stories and all this, I don't discount what people say, even if I'm thinking it at first, because they'll say something and I may think that's just so off the wall, but then somebody else will come along 2 weeks later and say something the same thing. And then at the risk of some of the stories getting repetitive, because and Linda had said something to me about this. Linda Godfrey had said, wash, rinse, repeat. You kind of get the same stories. She felt like the first book, Beasts of Bray Road, and she told me in Barton this, was kind of like, it was, she didn't want it to be repetitive. So when she started going into the more theoretical stuff, that's when it really started to pick up. Like, it was like, to me, Hunting the American Werewolf, that was like the beginning where it kind of took off and it went on its own. And she started going into like Gadara, that story. And I'm not going to tell you what it is. Just go by. Her husband Steve's a great guy. I'm sure he has the rights to her books now. I don't know, but I'm sure they're still for sale if you go to Amazon. And he took care of her up until the end. So go and buy the books. Check them out. The books I have left from her are from my personal collection that she autographed, and she's gone now, so I can never get those autographs again. But just go and read the books. And you'll see what she started. She just kind of went down the rabbit hole, and came full circle. Because ultimately it'll bring you right back, but then you'll have all this knowledge, and it will change you, and it'll change your views when you start to read all these different people's accounts that are all different, but they're all the same. What I mean by that is like there is not going to be any denying all these people having seen these things. You know what I mean? Does that make sense what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, and one thing we spoke about it earlier, but one thing I always pride us on is that even if like we find your story so bizarre that we can't really say it on air, we'll put it in a spot and like be ready to put it on there if we ever find anything else like it. If like it's not, I don't think we've ever gotten a story to where like, oh, we just got to throw this away. There's nowhere we can put this. It's always been like,
It'll get told.
let's leave this here because I'm sure something else is going to match up with that, and something always does.
Yeah.
And like that's the thing that these people aren't understanding.
Okay, example. Keep the camera on you because I want
Okay.
I want to see your reactions to this. The black goo.
Yeah, exactly.
Like when we
Yeah.
first heard about that, like, what was it, 4 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
We were like, what the F is
It's
that?
absolutely
Like,
bizarre.
What is that?
It's like what kind of sci-fi,
And-
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, and then some of the people that were telling, like, I shouldn't probably say his name, but Tom, his name starts with an A.
Yeah,
And he was like, these people, because his words, not mine. He said I was dumb enough to put it in a group,
Yeah.
and they just tore him apart. And when he gave us that story, now I didn't tell it right away. Y'all remember that?
Mhm.
We kind of put it on the back
it was
burner.
literally sitting there.
Yeah, and he was a nice guy. I don't think he's crazy. The guy's a computer programmer. He's not, and I'm going to be honest, he's not the most imaginative guy.
Yeah.
But he gave us a story, and he got lambasted for that. And then later on, it was like, you get another one, and you're like, whoa, wait a minute, whoa. And then Armando had one, and then we had more and more. And then I started realizing that there's a bunch of people seeing these things, but in the groups, they're getting attacked. So they're just shutting up about it because it's not something that's accepted.
Mm-hmm.
So what is this black goo? Like, it exists. We know that because people are seeing it, having experiences with it.
Well, I mean, even if we're talking about just black goo, there's still a wide variety that we're dealing with, because we're dealing with like the shapeshifter one that we talked about earlier, but then we're also dealing with the one that I'm excited with what we talk about with where it drips. That one's freaky. I don't want to say anything else.
That one yet.
I don't want to say anything else because I know you guys are going to be excited about that. But that one's freaky as heck. But that's way different.
But the one guy was who was a middle school principal.
Yeah, and that's way different from the one that the other guy was dealing with. Like, they're all still different, even still in the category of black goo. So it's like, if you shut off entirely all of it, you're missing out on so much.
Yeah, because
pattern recognition is a big part of analysis of data.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
so
and it's
you don't cherry pick. If you cherry pick, you can't. It cuts out proper pattern recognition. So
that's
you
right.
Can't, like, how can you come to a hypothesis?
Yeah, you can't. And when I was, one of the things that happened to me and my friend, that when we saw the Dogman, the ridicule was instantaneous. The crazy thing was that one of the people that ridiculed us was a friend of ours, and we were hanging out at a party. We were joking around, whatever. And they're like, hey, man, my friend, one of my friends, Adam, Adam, goofy. Adam's like, these guys saw a werewolf, and we're all like, everybody's laughing. One of those guys on my baseball team sitting there making jokes back and forth. And then later on, he it looked like he was going to cry. He comes to me outside. Not there. It was at a different time. I was at Circleville hanging out. And they had like this little bull riding thing or whatever, the Taylor's, and where I grew up, it's all cattle and whatever. I grew up in Hickville, and we were at this bull riding thing, and he comes up to me and he says, "Look, man," he's like, "You're not alone." It was a year later. I was like, I was kind of freaked out. I was like, "What are you talking about? I'm not alone." Like, who's behind me? And he goes, "No, dude." He goes, "No." And then I said, "Dude, you made fun of us at that party. I remember." Y'all were not in a bad, I don't want to fight the guy.
He was just jesting,
but I was mad. I was like, dude, you're making fun of me. You've never known me to just make up stories. And then he says, yeah. And then he had some ghost stuff happen to him, but he also saw one of these creatures. And then he gave me his story. And, and I'm sure he's got a career now. I don't think he wants me saying his name or whatever, but some of the people did give me their names and let me get permission. But I understand, but it's so weird because he sat there with a straight face, and I've never known him to be a liar, and he mocked us with everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And then a year later, he comes to me almost in tears and he's like, "Look, man, I've carried this with me for a long time." And I said, "Why did you do that?" And I should have already known why, but I wanted to hear him say it. And he said, "Dude, I saw what y'all went through. I didn't want to go through that."
No.
His own dad had an encounter. And his dad was ridiculed. He was at Randy's Ice House, which, of course, in Taylor, that's the place to go to hang out with high class. I'm not bagging on my friends and hang out at Randy's. That's
where all the brightest minds in Taylor go.
Yeah, but
true scholars.
Both our dads, mine and yours,
yeah,
we used to go drink after
Once
work.
again.
That's where you go. You go to Randy's Ice House.
And I mean, they're not exactly philosophers. I'm just saying.
Your dad's has a
smart
good
people.
job. My dad had a good job.
They're smart.
But they would go and they would unwind there. But the stories, sometimes people would say, "Hey, I saw something." And they're like, "Oh, shut up, Phil. You're just full of crap, blah, blah, blah." But we got a story out of there. A lady came on the show talking about a werewolf that they drove right through, right there at Lexington. But when he saw his dad, ridiculed, his dad died, when we were kids. But that's why he didn't want to talk about that. And he said, "I saw what happened to y'all. And he goes, and everything in me wanted to scream and say, I saw this too. But instead it came out as joking and laughing, and then I joined in. And he asked me for forgiveness, and I'm like, dude, I didn't care. I was like, we're friends. We've been friends since we were little. We were little league together. I didn't hold any grudges at all. I said, dude, people made fun of me, but it really helped that my friend's grandfather took me to the side and told me his encounter, what happened to him. And I said, that made me feel a lot better, and then talking to some of Martha's family out near San Gabriel and them talking about what they had seen, and it kind of brought it. I knew I wasn't crazy. And I think Daniel kind of went down his own path, and he chose to not make a big deal and talk about it and go into the paranormal like I did, and became a preacher of the word, and he's a very strong in the spirit. He's a very good guy. I'd have him pray for me over anything. When I was dying in the hospital, I nearly died in 2018, he prayed over me. And I think his prayers were very strong. I think he helped me.
And I think that's what's really cool about, podcasting in general, but specifically our podcast, is because I think we were one of the first pioneers to be like, we're open to all of it. I think like we really allowed people to be like, hey, we don't put boxes up, we don't put labels and things. Our thing is paranormal, no matter what it is, no matter what cryptid, no matter what creature you saw. If you saw a weird shark, we'll take that story too. We might not put it on here because it was a shark, but at the very least, we'll listen and we'll hear you out. And because of that, we're starting to see a shift in the community where it's a little bit being more accepted to have some of those more weirder stories, even though there's a big push on the other side. I think they're on the losing end, and that's the way it should be, because if you're not willing to have this open, like, topic of like, we don't know what the heck any of this is,
Like the
so let it
information
all
has to
come
flow
to us.
freely.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it all has to come through so that we can really be able to like separate it and really find the hidden gems. And I think that's what we're able to do. And I think that's what we're really, it took 4 years, but I think we're finally starting to really see that change a lot more.
And we didn't want to talk about certain things in the early going
No.
because we were like
Especially
scared.
with Armando. I mean,
Yeah, and well, he actually pushed to talk about the black goo before, but I said no at that point. Well, actually, I think we all kind of were in consensus that we talk about it. It's going to be
well, he brought it up, and we were like, that we didn't know if that, like, where we could really go with that. We're like, how can we do a whole show about that? And it didn't really like make sense. But
even
we
a
told
paranormal
him
potluck because we thought we're going to be.
we didn't know how to tie it in.
We didn't know how to
stuff.
tie it in, and then we were bullied.
Yeah,
like big time bullied, and we were attacked, and I just every time I wanted to quit, you the fans or you the audience, I don't like calling people fans because y'all aren't like, I'm not the Beatles or whatever. I'm just a guy. But my audience, my listeners would bring me back and say, look, please don't quit. And I didn't do it as a bluff. I did it because I wanted out. I was done with the ridicule, done with it. It was like living a teenage life all over again where I'm being made fun of, being told I'm crazy. And it was like, here we go again. It's like being 15 and 16 all over again. You're made fun of, you're ridiculed. The more you come out and tell the truth about what you've seen and what's happened to you, and it is the truth, then you have so many people who will just come out of the woodwork and just bash you because and it does take its toll. It is exhausting fighting people, and then once my mother, when she passed and that happened with, that other channel's fan base, they just went ballistic on me, and it was soul crushing. Like, folks, you have no idea. Like, it was soul crushing. If a weaker person, and my strength doesn't come from me, it comes from my God, my Father, God. I couldn't do it. I couldn't have made it without you guys. There is a support, propping me up, and God just being there for me in my relationship with Christ. That's what got me through, because I was ready to just die. I was so crushed. I had just lost my mother, and I had this troll army that was just on my back, and they were just eating me alive. I felt like I was being eaten to death by bugs, and I was just like, every day I knew some kick in the teeth, kick in the gut. But, I think about Tyson Fury when I watched him fight Deontay Wilder, and when he got knocked out.
he was out.
He was out.
He was,
and I saw him like laying there, and I was like, and I actually I had a little money. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not a real gambling guy, but every now and then I thought this guy's got him. He's got it. Tyson Fury is really good. And I think when he beat Klitschko, I knew that was it. He was going to go. I mean, that was it. The Klitschkos were the best. I don't care what anybody says. In my opinion, they could beat anybody. And it was their time to go. And so I thought, this guy, he's not, there's no way he's going to stay down. And I just had this weird thought in my head. I told you this, Anthony. And he just opened his eyes and he just rose up like Lazarus.
Literally terrifying.
And then he got up and, and Wilder has said a few things about it, but never totally admitted to. But when, I remember seeing a clip where they asked him, he goes, he was out. I knocked him out. And he was. He got up off the canvas and he stood up and he was like, and he kind of shakes his head and then he gets up and he just goes back to work and he beats him.
It terrified Wilder. You could see it. It changed him entirely.
It did. Who the hell gets up from that?
Because he threw that was like a hard right.
Which he destroyed so many people with.
Well,
and then you see Deontay kiss his glove and do a little dance because he turns around and he doesn't see that he's getting up. And then you see his face change.
It was what do I got to do to beat this guy?
Yeah, dude, are you serious? I had it. It's in the bag. It's right there. And then he gets up.
One of the things, too, and I talked to you about this, Anthony, because when you were younger, you asked me, Mijo, you told me, you said, what books should I read to learn about history? Of course, I told you Plato. I told you Alexander the Great. You need to read about, and what you came to me and you said the Granicus River. And one of the questions you asked me, and if you remember this, you were 17 years old, and you said, is it true that the Persians had over 1 million soldiers at that river? You remember that?
Yeah.
And I said yes. And you go, how on God's green earth did 40 to 50,000, when you added the Thracian cavalry and you added in a few of their allies, how did the Macedonian Greeks defeat, with 48,000, roughly 48,000, 1 million-man army? And I told him, I said, dude, intestinal fortitude, the will to do it, and when you have that kind of will, it's like, how do you say it? It's like you have ambition and the will to feed it.
Yeah.
And when I was sitting there wallowing in my sorrow, my mother dying, I felt I was laying there on the bed with my head in my hands, and my wife told me, just quit, just forget all this. Who cares, man? Let's get out of this. We're together. We have each other. We don't need this. This is too much. And you said the same thing. And I remember, I just thought, I can sit here and I can wallow in my pity, wallow in my misery, or I can be like one of those Macedonians and just pick up my spear and go at as many of the Persians as you can and just do what you got to do. Because, another example is Cortez when he burned the ships.
Leonidas and the hot gates.
In the hot gates, the 300 Spartans. Cortez is always looked at as a bad guy, but he toppled an empire that was very evil. I don't care what anybody says.
Oh, yeah.
And they said, they turned around, and one of his lieutenants says, what did you just do? You just killed us all. He says, no, you will kill us all if you don't go do what we have to do, because now there's no turning back. And they almost mutinied because they knew that if he went back to Cuba, the governor of Cuba was going to put him in shackles and chains. He was going to go to jail.
Yeah, because he didn't have a license.
He didn't have a license to do what he did.
Yeah.
So it was do or die. So he turned around and he said, there's 600 of us. March forward. Let's go. Then when he met up with the Aztecs, he saw this horrific things they were doing, throwing babies off of temples. It's not propaganda. That really happened. Yeah, archaeologists have proven.
In the art that the Aztecs use to depict themselves, they show themselves doing these things. This is not European propaganda.
Blood is literally it's despite how long it's been, it's literally still in the stone. That's how terrifying what they did.
Yeah, and he said, look, these people have to have tons of enemies. I mean, they are taking everyone from around them and just butchering them. So there was one group of people who I consider one of the toughest people that have ever lived, and that was the Tlaxcalans.
Yeah, they had to keep fighting them over and over to win their respect enough to
get them to leave them alone.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they had a little square They were given one little square in the middle of the Aztec Empire. They were surrounded by them.
Mm-hmm.
And when Cortez came, they started fighting him because they didn't know who the hell he was.
Mm-hmm.
They were like the Comanches. And the word Comanche, actually, I'll tell you this. What does it mean? It's a Ute word.
Yeah, the Comanche. It's funny. Comanche is a Ute word. The word is originally Comancia, and it means those who fight me all the time.
Yeah.
So it's just like these people, everywhere they go, they're just fighting me everywhere.
They're violent.
I can't get rid of
Yeah,
them.
Can't get rid of them. Yeah. And so the Aztecs were very much warlike like that, and the Tlaxcalans had been beaten into a little square, but they hadn't given up. So finally Cortez, after they were laying siege to him in the mountain pass, and they were like, we're going to die here. His soldiers are getting mad, belly aching again. You burned our ships and blah, blah, blah. And he's like, dude, these people are our ticket. You don't get it. Because if nothing else, he was a man of vision. And he knew that. He said, dude, we have to ally with these people because they're going to help us overthrow and his men were like, what? Like, how is this little group of Indians going to... He goes, dude, they've been being at war with these people for freaking 200 years, and they're still here. So that tells you something. And so he had them. He had the Tabascans that he had brought in from the coast, and he had all these others that defected. And he could not have conquered the Aztecs without the other native allies. So it wasn't a war of just a bunch of Spaniards coming in and overrunning a bunch of primitives. No, dude, it was the other natives who were sick of being killed and bullied and eaten, and so they went after him. And together they defeated them. And now people can cry about it and say that it was a horrible thing what they did, blah 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 blah. Some will jump for joy, and others will gnash their teeth.
Once again, it's a matter of perspective.
It's a matter of perspective. I look at it a little differently. I look at it very pragmatically, and they were going to destroy themselves anyway. But I look at this situation when I was down. And I was ready to give up, and I prayed, and I thought, I'm just going to go on. And I felt like the devil was grinning. Like he was just like, yeah, that's it. You're on your knees. You've been knocked out. You have to get up. And whenever I got up, I looked at that, Deontay Wilder fight with what's his name? Tyson Fury. And I remember watching that and thinking, dude, there's the analogy right there.
And then when he got up, he won the rest of that round.
Mm-hmm.
It was crazy.
It's unbelievable. But, Jesus brought Lazarus back from the grave, I mean, like it was, and Tyson Fury said it before the fight too. The third one, he was the second one and the third one. He said, he goes, you're praying to your ancestors. He goes, I pray to my Lord and Savior. He goes, so you go ahead and channel whatever demons, whatever you got to channel, and I'm going to go with God.
Oh yeah. Because Deontay Wilder, like in a interview to hype up the fight, he was talking about how he has this alter ego that when he's in the ring, and that's who you're fighting. You're not fighting Deontay Wilder. You're fighting the Bronze Bomber, which is an alter ego when an ancestral spirit goes inside him and takes over his body. Tyson Fury was like, well, I don't want to fight. I'm gonna knock you out. I'm gonna knock Deontay Wilder out, and I don't need some other man to be inside me because I have my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, and that's all I need. And he did it. He proved it. So.
Yeah. And you were saying like the Aztec Empire was definitely gonna kill itself out anyway, which is something I think people miss out. Any group of people that demand such high sacrifices are eventually going to start eating themselves once they run out of external enemies.
Mm-hmm.
So then they were a doomed empire from the beginning. So yeah, it's like ridiculous when people don't just use a little bit of their brain to figure stuff out.
They don't understand, well, I mean, history, it's the least studied. People don't like the subject. They don't like it.
Those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it.
But I mean, when you go back and you look at this, I tell anyone, go check out Tyson Fury's fight, the second one with Deontay Wilder, and take a look at what happened. It's crazy. It was seriously crazy, dude. I mean, like he should not have gotten up. It should have been.
Well, I think that's one of the major reasons why he lost that third fight, is because I was like, what can you really do to the guy? Like, I don't really believe Deontay really wanted to fight him that third time, because I don't think
he beat him the first time.
I don't think he really thought he had it, because, like, to be honest, once you hit him, like, the first one he was like, eh, but that second one, that was a murder shot. Like that should have been it. Every time he's hit someone with that, it was it. And then he still gets up. Deontay was just thinking like, what am I supposed to do now? So it was kind of like, he kind of felt like, I felt like in that third fight, he was just doing it for show because he had to.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you watch like I think it was the pre-fight interview for the third fight, Deontay Wilder pulls this little stunt where he brings these headphones on, and he doesn't say anything in the except at the beginning of the interview when he says, "I just want to thank my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ." So I guess he had a whole new perspective. So he was humble enough to say that, but he wasn't humble enough to go through the rest of the interview. So he said that, and he just put these headphones on and didn't say nothing for the rest of it.
Yeah, that was pretty much it.
Yeah,
I guess the Bronze Bomber couldn't help him that time.
Yeah.
yeah.
But he said that he channeled some kind of whatever, and he was like, well, I'm not going to, I'm going to knock you out. It doesn't. So, but yeah, it was very, I thought about that a lot. And when I was going through what I went through and what I was having to face, I read about Lazarus because you remember my mother's funeral. I read a whole passage. I did the eulogy and I talked about Lazarus. And I was going through a lot at that time, not just dealing with my mother's death, but the attacks. I shouldn't even be here. I mean, I should be done with this and gone. And instead, I got 2 books coming out. And that's not bragging. That's just a testament to what God gives you as your will. If you have ambition and the will defeated, that's all it is. I say that. Perception is everything, folks. Perception is the key that unlocks the intangible power of the Spirit. So, folks, thank you for being here. We will do this again. Like I said, I got a really good Dogman story I'm going to tell you on Sunday. Try to remind me about that. And then I got one about the Tooth Fairy. Tooth Fairy sounds kind of goofy. He's like, but not when you're a kid.
I mean, it depends on what kind of tooth.
Yeah. It was pretty creepy, dude. It creeped me out. So I was like, well, maybe I should tell this one on the show. But okay, guys, I'll see you later. Thanks. Show up Sunday at 7:30, probably 7:30.
Yeah, 7:30.
Yeah.
All right, and we're gonna tell some stories, and we're gonna talk, and you can ask questions, and we'll be here again on Sunday. And
Thank everybody for being here.
Even unless I'm so sick I can't get out of bed, but pray for me that I get well and we can do this. All right, I'll see you guys. Thanks. Peace.